On that note, welcome everybody to RantCast. Today we got something special planned for y'all. I see chat gang already filtering in. Zerg, thank you so much out the gates with the tier 1 sub there, buddy. Tonight we got something a little bit special. We're going to do a RantCast roundtable. We've got more guests than I've ever had on at one time. Tom Lyons will be joining us a little bit later. He's going to be late. So we'll have everybody here talking actually about lore and kind of in specifically how you get your lore on the table with your own army. I am, of course, Mr. Mephisto, the man with every opinion unlocked. Joining me tonight, I'm just going top left here. I've got Mr. Strengthhammer himself, the Chuck Moore.
Hello, everybody.
On the top right here, I've got Good Painter Stormcast Man, or the artist formerly known as Good Painter Stormcast Man, Good Painter Legions of Nagash Man, and then soon to be Good Painter Elves Man, Martin Orlando. How's it going tonight, man?
Hello, friends.
Stealing the tagline.
There we go. And then down there in the bottom left, we've got Paul from the Mortal Realms podcast. Say hello to everybody, man.
Well, hello all. How are you doing tonight?
Yeah, he did. Martin beat you to the hello, friends. So Tom is here with us in spirit. Like I said, he'll be joining us a little bit later. He's going to be late. I don't know where to jump in quite on this one, but I just want to say to everybody, if you're joining us from this is the second episode of RantCast this week. Earlier on in this week, I mentioned I'd just gotten back from PACA. I had a grind getting to that. I multiple 10, 12-hour streams a day, painting every day. And actually, Chuck Moore here. I don't know if it was a challenge. How would you term it?
I don't know. I just threw a gauntlet in your general direction, and you said, "All right, I'm already running this way. I might as well pick it up."
Right. And so now he owes me a bone for the tithe of a nondescript, perhaps unknown origin.
Yep.
Terrathian.
There's some Daughters of Cain bits out of my bits box there.
Perfect.
Which is a great little way to have a little narrative fun, even though we haven't played a game.
Yep.
I wasn't involved in any of this other than just watching you paint, but now you're going to paint this up and put it on one of your bases, I assume.
I'm probably going to throw it on the Bone Tithe Nexus, actually. I think that'll be a good place for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I think this might start a trend for my own personal army narrative. I might collect tithes from opponents, content creators, and I think I'll paint up those bits and add them to the Bone Tithe Nexus. This will be a nice little way to kind of keep my personal narrative growing and progressing forward.
You will
I'm
fry
all for that.
spider bits from my cold dead hand.
I used to actually do that same thing in 8th edition fantasy with my high elves. Anytime I beat someone, I would get a bit, whether it was from them or buying it separate, and put it on a model that was in a unit that I used to beat them. So, there's little grails from beating Bretonians, there's halberds from beating Tomb Kings, and a little bit of everything. I think I took out everybody's army at least once in my local shop, so there's bits all over the army. So it's a good way to do it.
Yeah, see, that's great. I mean, bases can get a little cluttered, I think, if I were to collect that many tithes. But the Nexus, it's have you seen this thing? It's basically, I mean, it's basically a Warcry amount of terrain. If you were to have a Warcry game, you could just throw one Nexus on and you're good to go. That's how big it is.
Are you saying it's the Nexus big thing?
Yeah. The Mortal Realms puns are here on RantCast, everybody. So, yeah, I guess that's a really good jumping off point. So tonight we're going to be talking, as I said at the onset, we're going to be talking about sort of lore and how you kind of bring that lore to the table. Now, lore is, I think narrative means one thing when we say narrative. When I say narrative, as a writer, I mean something entirely different. But when you say a narrative in the context of Age of Sigmar, I guess, what do y'all think? Martin, I haven't heard from you in a bit.
So I would say, at least for my approach, I don't know if this is what we want to try, or just for an opening. I would say narrative for me, especially since this is a visual hobby. It's arts and crafts. We're making miniatures. It's visual storytelling. How can I tell a story through my miniatures to an audience? My opponent, people at an event, people on the internet.
Right on. And Paul, what do you think on that subject?
I think narrative for me is just why I'm building an army. tend not to build armies just because I have the miniatures. I want to build a narrative in order to build my army around them. So for me, it's the first thing I do when I'm building an army.
So you go in narrative first with your like even selection of your units.
Yes.
Yeah. And Chuck?
Absolutely.
For me, it's a deeper connection to the game. I mean, I love building competitive lists, but I also love building narrative theme stuff. Love converting. I love every aspect of this hobby. So by also then creating this story that's ongoing for me, gets me invested much more deeply into the army I'm playing, and into the Mortal Realms, and into the game as a whole, to the point where I never shut up about it. So to me, it's a deep anchor point.
It's a deep anchor point. So, and I promised I wasn't going to do this, but since Tom's going to be late, for me it is kind of all of the above there. I said early on the reason I play Death Armies, I'm the type of guy who in Mass Effect, I play Paragon Shepherd every time no matter what. I find it really difficult when I'm role-playing to, like, be a dick in a video game when I'm, like, directly inserted into the game. I'm like, this is, like, what I would do if I were a space superhero, right?
Let it be known, I am not the person who made the Mass Effect reference, says the Mass Effect superfan.
As long as we don't talk about the game that hasn't happened yet, Mass Effect 3 will be fine. They're going to make it one day, it's going to be great. It's going to be the best. Like, there's no way they would ruin it, ever.
And Kane is
Do they
alive.
have flying cars where you are?
Not yet. No, but like, so like, yeah, I'm like the Paragon playthrough. But for whatever reason, you know, like, when I played Warhammer early on, like, first off, I was in my goth phase. So naturally I'm going to play undead. But I found, like, as I got older, like, I needed to be the bad guy army in a, like, me versus you sense. And so, like, I really kind of gravitated towards that, like, villain persona and the villainous armies. And so that's why, like, you know, my main army will always be, like, Death, and then my, you know, I had an opportunity to play, like, Stormcast and, you know, maybe one of these Order armies when I was buying my second army. I'm like, no, Beast of Chaos, like gotta sacrifice people to a volcano god. Like, you know, I just couldn't, like, I can't shake that persona. So it starts with, for me, like, even to, like, switch my brain on to be able to fight you on the table, I have to have a narrative reason. And that kind of makes me play a bad guy army, because if I was like a good guy army, I'd be like, you know what? We should try diplomacy first, guys. Like, where's my diplomacy check dice? Like,
Is there really any good guys in Age of Sigmar?
well,
Maybe
I mean,
there's okay guys.
This is a very deep
Possibly.
philosophical question.
So, I mean,
Go
do
ahead.
we want to answer this?
yeah, go ahead. No, you got the torch now, man.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
narratively,
so,
yeah.
So I would say if there's one thing to take away from, I would say, faction-centric storylines, be it from television like Game of Thrones, books, or games like Warhammer, I would say morality is as much about perspectives as it is like the rules of the world and the society. In Game of Thrones, I think that we empathize with the Stark protagonists because we start the stories with them and we follow them the longest out of any of the characters. If Tywin Lannister was the protagonist and we followed him, I would think that a lot of the actions he undertook in the story would probably feel justified. So I think there's our answer to, are there good guys? Whose perspective do you associate yourself with the best?
Okay. So, like, since I associate with Nagash's supreme control, I think he's the good guy.
Yes.
Right.
And I think that's the key to good faction-driven fiction and games.
Right. The POV. Anyone got something else to add to that, or perhaps a counterpoint to that?
Well, I think the question of what is good in Age of Sigmar is an interesting question, right? Because what do you compare good against?
Right. So, like, you're taking the moral relativism sort of philosophical question there.
Well, when nobody agrees on what a benefit is to the world, the realm, whatever, right? How do we define good? And I think that's an interesting question because from a certain perspective, Arcade, because he stabilized more of the mortal realms than anybody else.
So archaeology.
Even though you live them in a chaos-fueled world,
Mhm.
still in normal reality, right? There's still a predictableness to having that. So, open question. Put it that way.
Right,
But
right.
Can
from
you
my
tell
point
that
of view,
Archaean was the first model I bought?
Yeah,
say,
yeah, yeah.
but from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. So
Right,
I
right.
mean, it's
Right, yeah, the best line ever.
it's I kind of agree. It is kind of relative in how you want to look at it, but I think also that's a very good thing because everyone can be the good guy if no one's the good guy, in a way. Kind of like if
Right.
everything's an emergency, nothing's an emergency. So whatever army you latch on to and develop the story for is going to be your good guy.
Right. Well, so if I may like counterpoint here, there's a difference between like protagonist and antagonist, and protagonist isn't the same thing as a good guy. Protagonist tends to be just something that drives the story forward, and then an antagonist would be something that gets in the way of that story progressing, right? So when you're dealing with POV, a lot of times when you're switching POV, you're switching protagonists in that any given moment. You're not necessarily switching, like in a moral sense. You're not necessarily pulling the levers on morality. Like there are certain things. The game is very mythical and bigger than us, and I think that then are fixed points in sort of morality. Like we have a lot of societies that have a long time that we've been around and read histories on to like come to a moral consensus in our reality. Age of Sigmar and stuff. A lot of that's implied if it's even talked about at all. So it's difficult to like gauge, their moral compass in their realms. But I mean, in general, eating souls tends to be sort of universally like a negative, like a not morally good thing. So
Sigmar's the bad guy.
So Sigmar is the bad guy here. Like Nagash, he wants to recycle him. Like he just, he's very green.
I don't know.
Like,
do we want to start on this? Have you heard my opinion on Nagash?
I'm sure it's pretty bad. So moving on, let's talk about then what.
Where's that rug we just swept us under?
Yeah. So
we can have a whole discussion.
Like I don't want to take the spotlight off you completely, Paul. So I'll go ahead and I'll kind of start with your personal sort of narrative. We were kind of talking about the onset, and a couple interactions on Twitter. I know you as the Spider King.
Yeah.
So your primary army, for those that maybe don't, the fools that haven't listened to the Mortal Realms yet, or maybe don't follow you on Twitter, you want to give a quick sort of background, and then maybe take us into some of your personal narrative, and then we'll talk a little bit about sort of Adepticon and that sort of table side of narrative and lore for yourself. And feel free to tell Paul he's wrong about Nagash at any point in time while he's talking.
We have to have the discussion before you can tell me wrong. You didn't even heard my opinion yet. So the Spider Fang are my army passion project. I've been working on them for 10
years.
I bought a Battle for Skull Pass like 5 times when it came out because it was like $40.
Okay.
So I don't think I've ever used the dwarves, but I use those night goblins a ton. I think I have 700 to 800 of them somewhere around in my house.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process, I ended up gaining, 70 to 80 spider riders. So I was like, hey, look, it's a free army. This would be kind of fun. And then I started converting them pretty heavily because I wasn't all that sold on the dynamicness of the pose. And we ended up being able to go to England on my 29th birthday and ordered 4 gigantic spiders with Spider Boss. At the time, the cool thing you could do at Warhammer World is that you could do a made-to-order there, and they would have it for you in like 3 hours.
Oh wow!
So I got 4 of the metal spider goblins when I was there for 8 hours, or for like 5 hours. So that kind
They
of
still mostly do that, by the way.
Yeah, it's a super cool thing, and it's the one thing that I was like, what can I get at Warhammer World that I can't get anywhere else? Because at that time, Warhammer World was kind of just a big hall and a normal GW store. Now you could get all kind of awesome sweet treats, but at the time that was the big thing. And so I came home and I started converting those, and I converted them into chariots. And then when Ragnarok got released, it just blew my mind because I had been using balsa wood to make howdahs on the back of my gigantic spiders. So everything just like fell into place. I was like, this is my army.
Yeah.
And 12 Ragnaroks later, I have quite a massive force. And it is the thing that really I always come back to.
Well, it's like GW personally thanked you for coming to Warhammer World,
Yeah.
and they like sent you this
Yep.
this additional thing a little bit later. Martin, we got a question from Chat Gang here. What is the art on your desk?
That is the Silver Tower print. They gave them away at one of the store birthdays or anniversaries. Hold on.
Well, you
Can everyone see that?
I can see that, but people listening on Podbean and such, check the VOD and Twitch Live.
Yeah. I can't move the computer any further because then it would be inside my chest.
That would be sweet. I mean, if you were a robot. Oh, look, we got everyone's just showing off their art. I've got this really sweet picture of a ley line walker here.
The thing is that this was this is signed by Paul Dayton, and
awesome.
It came with a crazy cool frame. Like, I forget which store birthday or anniversary, but my local store in Jenkintown is very much the home of a big, like, huge 40K community. Mm-hmm. So, while it's unfortunate that we don't have as many Age of Sigmar gamers that visit that store specifically, it did mean that all of the Age of Sigmar swag they had at one of their store birthdays or anniversaries or something was basically ripe for the pickings. So I forget what requirements I needed to meet to get it, but I met those requirements and I got this picture.
And I agree with you. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, G-Dad. Nagash does need to focus a touch more on killing Skaven, so they stop foiling his plans. So real quick, then back to you, Paul. So the spiders are that army that you come back to all the time, and I noticed. So you do run. I know last year you ran the narrative event for Adepticon. I've got the pack right here. I'll go ahead and open that up. And you're running 2 more now at this Adepticon?
Well, I was originally going to run 2 more. Thankfully, Eric, Stone Monk Gamer, stepped in and is spearheading the Warcry event because running 1 event at Adepticon is more than enough stress for me.
Fair enough. Yeah, so go ahead.
So Eric is running it along with Josh and Paven. So the Dogs of Warcry boys are taking point on that and really pushing that forward. But it's still going to be somewhat of a joint effort as well as we move into it. So
cool. And I don't want you to spoil any of the heat, any of the sauce coming out of Adepticon this year. So we're going to go ahead and talk about this 2019 pack, which is of course what you ran. So you have ways of getting your narrative in your army. Care to share any of those, and then we'll talk about how you've kind of approached this pack, because spoiler, thar be spoilers here.
So the first time I ran Gibbering Dome was 2 years ago, and Chuck was gracious enough to allow us to use his witch elves to take over the Gibbering Dome and to be the opponent, which was an awesome time. That was definitely just kind of, hey, I want to build some stuff and let's play an army that was released recently. And so I have some awesome memories of that event. And then we moved on last year and moved to the Spider Fang because they had a book that was released within the last year as well.
The GSG.
So as far as the Spider Fang are concerned for the narrative hook, they originally were kind of a Spider Fang conversion for the prairie goblins that they used to have, right? The wolf riders and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I made Daddy Longlegs to be a little bit faster to try and fit in with the rules, right? So they have long legs, so they're a little bit faster, harder to hit because they're higher up.
See, I like how you're reinforcing the narrative. I like how you have a mind toward the narrative, the visual, and the rules in this. By the way, I think that's really. I think that's really important when you're trying to achieve that sort of, perception of truth, that verisimilitude across all those platforms. But yeah, continue.
Well, And that was one of the reasons for doing that conversion, as I wanted it to look different enough that you would be like, hey, that's different. But that the explanation made sense, that once I told you, you'd be like, oh yeah, they're wolf riders because they're wolf spiders or whatever, right? You know, Daddy
Right,
Long
right.
Legs. Edition came out, they released a special character called Snagla Grobspit. And so Snagla had a pretty sweet story where his home Arachnarok was killed. They were ambushed while he was gone, and he ripped off the fangs from the Arachnarok, and he used one of them as a hatchet, and he used another one as a throwing weapon. And so in my display, I have a dead Arachnarok that was killed by an Empire cannonball, and then I built my own conversion of Snaggle Grobspit with the Arachnarok Fang as a hatchet, and Arachnarok Fang as this little boomerang thing.
There you go.
So the whole army revolved around that character.
That's really cool.
And when they moved into, thank you. And when they moved into Age of Sigmar, the character went away, but the narrative did not. It's a simple way of putting it.
So you maintain that thread.
Go ahead.
You maintain that thread coming into Age of Sigmar then.
Yeah, you can't have a hero
To avoid
on
the
a spider
pun,
anymore.
you kept weaving that thread.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spun my web.
Okay. So you're hinging your narrative on a single character. This is actually one of the tenets I know that Chuck really has some thoughts on. You want to interject now or save it now, Chuck?
Well, I can save it.
I'll save it. All right, cool. I'd like to expand on it. All right, so you carried that thread through into AOS, and I guess while we're here, did you find it? We've been in AOS 5 years now. This is going into our 5th year, right about.
Yes.
Did you find it easier to weave your narrative webs in the old world, or with the sort of blank canvas we've got going on with Age of Sigmar a little bit? Do you find it a little bit easier to kind of fill in that canvas yourself here?
Well, I have to say, I found it easier to weave my narrative in Age of Sigmar.
Unbelievable!
Could you start over again, please? I couldn't hear you.
For me, it was definitely easier to weave my narrative in Age of Sigmar. In the old world, I felt like I kind of had to be within what was in the book. Okay. I know they've talked about this on Stormcast a little bit, about how the main thrust of the narrative in the old world, if you were important enough to be in the main narrative, you'd be included in the books. And if you weren't, you were so unimportant as to be shoved off to the side. Right? So you can make up your own village or your own tribe or whatever, but in order to make them fit into the old world, you kind of have to switch up the main story.
You can't be important
Sigmar
enough.
Because it is exactly right. Like if you have Kurt Helborg, great, you have Kurt Helborg, right? But you can't have another guy that is Kurt Helborg, because that space has already been filled. And trying to make your character as important as that character was something that didn't leave space, that old world didn't leave space for, because it started in one time and ended slightly forward from that one time. You didn't have the space, the area to expand that. So Age of Sigmar has that breadth of space, that just vast amounts of land, that you could be someone who has as much power as, say, Gash, but Heinrich Himmler or something like that, and nobody would know about it.
Well, let's be the whole, maybe not Nagash, but certainly Archaon.
Well, I mean, so Heinrich Himmler I mentioned because in the end times he actually built a spider out of bones.
Yeah.
That he used to rampage across the old world. So he's one of my personal favorite death characters.
It is pretty metal.
Yeah.
I'm hearing heavy metal guitar riffs in the background right now.
Yeah. So not only did Age of Sigmar give you the breadth of space to expand that narrative, but because we now have factions, right? So it's destruction. I can use the whole, the destruction faction as opposed to just Spider Fang or just, Nigons. You could have kind of mixed them together, but they never really worked that well. And the narrative thrust, why would a Black Orc ever be with a bunch of weedy goblins, right? So I actually have, as a conversion for AOS, I have Spydrak the Ever Poison, as opposed to Gordrak, my own leader for that army.
No, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, so I can make my own character that has the same narrative thrust as Gordrak and can kind of do the same thing, but he's a space.
That's pretty cool. There's also something to be said for like the timeline's a little sort of like it's a little like in flux as well. Like we know.
Can you just say timey-wimey? Because I know
you want to. It's timey-wimey. Yeah, yeah. There's some timey-wimey. Oh man, like I can't hate on Whovians. I already have like all of the nerd sub factions mad at me, like West Side Story, like snapping, walking towards me whenever I put up a RantCast. So we might as well at least. I like Doctor Who. So there you go. I don't hate it like I hate Harry Potter and Star Wars, apparently. Agreed, Age of Sigmar is awesome for narrative flexibility, and Sean, we'll talk about the metal thing in a little while, because I wanted to bring up one of Chat Gang's personal narratives as part of this, because it's really awesome and close to my heart. You sound like you got something you want to say there, Chuck? Or no?
I would say I have to agree fully, just from my perspective. My High Elves in 8th edition, when I played them, and I had 10, 11, 12,000 points of High Elves by the time the End Times was rolling around. I only had one character in the army, and it was just a Dragon Prince on a horse, and it was named after, the name I use in just general RPGs. But it was always just the sub guy, because I'd always have Teclis or Tyrion or Ilariel, and he's not going to command them. He's going to be told what to do. So he was very much it's from that one line in the Big Red Book of, your general is you on the table, and it's like, oh, I'll put my persona in there, but my persona really meant nothing in old 8th edition, and maybe that was my being young as a gamer, and including narrative gamer on the tabletop level, but I just didn't feel there was room to do like what we can.
Yeah. Sorry, Chat Gang here busted my chops over the 3 things I hate the most, according to RantCast canon. I still do it. Like you're like, oh, when I was young, I had to like really insert myself into like my fictions and still. I'm 34 years old and have been paid cash money for writing stories, and I still do it. Like it's. I've just gotten better at hiding that it's me. Is really all that's changed now that I'm older as a writer and someone who composes narratives. I'm really the thing that I really go into now as an adult is taking myself and inverting myself, and that's what I've been inserting into my narratives, or taking a feature or quality of myself and then like making it villainous or making it heroic and just playing with the knobs of who I am. Right.
That's just like look at 30K with the Primarchs. They're just humans. Take one specific feature and just crank it up to 11. Yeah. It's an easy way to do it. I see what you mean.
Love the Spinal Tap reference, by the way. Back to, so you've got your narrative there, Paul. Then you go and run this Adepticon narrative event, and I was reading about the Gibbering Dome. Formerly known as the Voidskine. And I noticed that there was also a spider theme kind of throughout that. It wasn't just it wasn't just that like Gloomspite Gits show up on their Arachnaroks. It was actually like you had this sort of like Aether Web and stuff like that. And you want to just give us this sort of like general the elevator pitch of what the Gibbering Dome was, and kind of and go from there.
So the Gibbering Dome was this city called Voidskane, and Voidskane was the most famous university in the Mortal Realms during the Age of Enlightenment. It is a place separate from the gods, so no gods can actually go there. You know how you had the Gloaming, which is where Slanesh is theoretically at the moment. The Gibbering Dome is in that space as well. It's not in the Gloaming; it's in between other realms.
Akshi and Shaman were the two you said.
Exactly, And so it is this just vast monument to knowledge, and to progress, as it were. It is defined by these creatures that are left there called the Dare Tereth. And the Dare Tereth are not only transports, but also vessels of knowledge, and they allow people knowledge. Now, being apart from the gods obviously is not a great
Well, the gods
place to be.
The gods probably don't dig this, right? Like they
Exactly. This is a rival power or an unknown quantity, as it were, and so they took it upon themselves to remove knowledge from this place, and in the process, destroyed it. They removed the purpose from the Dare Tereth, and because of that, the Gibbering Dome became unanchored from between Akshi and Shimon, and now is whirling through the void, as it were.
Hell yeah.
And the Dare Tereth are wandering the realm.
It's just the TARDIS like just spiraling,
spinning around.
Yeah.
Exactly, pretty much. Yeah.
That's one thing I liked was the how the memories were stored in this like Aether Web. I thought that was a really, really cool touch.
Thank you.
So then you took this cool little like backstory, this narrative, and then you actually ended up go on to make essentially your own battle plans and sort of a progression. This would mirror the 3 rounds you would play in this narrative event, right?
Correct. That is
round 1, 2, 3.
Those were the 3 rounds that we played in last year's event. Okay. Straight up.
Cool. And you have these. Is this display? These are these like linoleum tiles that you use for the map?
Nope.
No.
So they're it's called PVC foam. So it's a PVC layer on the top, and then expanded foam that's out of PVC in the middle, and then another layer of PVC on the bottom.
Okay.
So they're basically plastic that can be carved like wood, carved and cut like wood.
Okay.
So Bishman, he's on Twitter. He's the guy who made the Burgomeister's Mansion, that's absolutely just ode to the Empire. That has been on display in Warhammer World and all over the place. He also builds displays for Darklands for Salute as well. So he'll scale model architecture student, and just makes the most things.
Okay, so when you made this, the progression through the narrative mirrors the battle plans, what's going on. So you have like the rescue, the Git web. So like the spiders actually show up in the second one, and then the escape. So you have like the victory conditions, and it's just what you kind of did with your daddy Longlegs, is you took the rules and you had the rules reflect the model, had them reflect the narrative, and that's a thread I saw through this. But I just wanted to share with you because so I could totally put Neo in my name too, because the one tournament I ran at Mayhem or Anime Milwaukee,
nice,
that had 4 people show up. Thank you, Mark Ramsey, Christian Ware, Isaiah, and
nice,
and Mark. Yeah, so and
all
so
the
Dave showed up. Yeah, so thank you all for you guys. We did round robin instead. It was 3 rounds. So I just want to share with you my narrative. You see, ours was the first realm took place in the realm of Gur. It was the round 1 was called the God Beast Zilla Attacks. So 2 armies converge on a mythic God Beast. Whomever controls it will attain great power. So then this was what was it? It was focal points, and there was something about. The next one was Half-Life, so Catastrophe. Over the course of the battle, the God Beast's heart was split in twain. Power can still be attained if you assemble it, so it became Duality of Death. Ooh. And then Nuclear Wasteland, Scorched Earth. So we lied. The heart, you put the heart back together, but now everything is a radioactive wasteland of death. Before you succumb to heinous radiation poisoning, as all will, you decide to at least burn your enemy city to the ground in spite. So there's a narrative. You see how
that's it.
Yeah, how narrative.
It's ongoing. It's going to turn quickly.
It's just like that escalated.
I was like, how do you escalate from a god beast? But wow, you did it.
Yeah. The question everyone in any of my D&D games will ask always. There's always the jump the shark moment in my campaigns. It usually happens around level 6. And so the campaign I'm running right now, and I think I'm struggling with it, rabbit hole number 2 here, is I didn't jump the shark early. And so now I'm just like, this is all lame. I just want to like blow something up or like kill a god or something. And I'm just like... I'm like, but that's my struggle. So, yeah, you basically... So, like, you made this narrative event, and you had this progression of that. Do you have any, I guess, sort of tips, you know, on like your digital soapbox here for how folks might get their narrative to their table, be it on their army, designing some battle plans, or making a little narrative event for their friends? It doesn't have to be a big, grandiose tournament. It can just be, you know, you and a couple friends.
So, the first tip I would have is have good friends. Right, Chuck is a great reason why this happened, and happened so well. And the second good tip is have a wife who is really amazing at graphic design and can make it look really cool, and have a better presentation than you could do on your own.
It's a really good looking PDF, by the way.
Thank you. But the other thing is that they always say when they're talking about the rules, the battle tomes, all these expansions, right? They're like, you play your own game. You can pick and choose. We're not telling you how to play. We're giving you a toolbox, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everything in that scenario, everything in those scenarios are straight up from GW publications. I straight up copied almost every rule in there except for the realm rules that I made for the Gibbering Dome. And that was just due to limitations of what I wanted the event to be and what the terrain allowed. But pulling it together was actually just narratively, this seems like a good scenario. What twist can I add to it from another published to make it fit into what I want to tell, the story I want to tell? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't that hard coming up with scenarios. It just was a lot of looking through the books and being like, what twist makes sense? How does this work? Why is this going to make sense for me?
Well,
it was the writing of the world that pushes it forward.
This is there's a quote in the Dirty Creative realm. It's you know, good artists borrow, great artists steal. This rule applies to, it doesn't matter if it's D&D homebrew or making your own narrative event. Somebody's already put in a lot of like work coming up with a great rule. You usually don't have to rewrite a rule 100% beginning, middle, end. You just look at like what already exists and tweak it, and you can come up with some really great stuff that way. So it doesn't need to be this insurmountable, like, oh man, I'm just not good at making up rules. Well, you just like go, oh, I've got this battle plan, and like if I take this battle plan and then like apply like this different rule from like Shyish, that normally wouldn't be on, you know, Chaman, which is where I want this to take place. Now you've like began to fill in some details with those different elements that you've begun to put in there. So. But I love the have good friends is probably a better tip than steal like an artist. So.
And if I might have a soapbox moment here, right?
Yeah, 100%.
One of my least favorite things, playing in an narrative is when somebody says it's not balanced. What good story, right? No good story starts with evenly matched forces met across a perfectly level field and had the same amount of energy, the same amount of weapons, and then fought to an exactly statistical standstill, right?
With a time limit.
With a time limit.
With a time limit, yeah.
With a time limit, and a referee standing there, like...
And so one of the things that I was concerned about is, you know, you get a player who's like, I'm going to bring this hard as nails 1,000-point list because I was going to play in the 1,000-point tournament, but now I'm playing in the Gibbering Dome instead. So I'm just going to be as competitive as I can. Right? And so one of the things that I did in my events to mitigate that was that first thing they did when they walked into the Gibbering Dome, they lost their general. Right? Great. You've got this awesome synergy. You've got this deadly combo. Well, I don't think it's going to work quite as well with your general missing. And that's exactly the point, right? Because that immediately creates a narrative. My general is missing. I need to find my general, right? And that was the entire thrust of the event, is I need to go find him, and where is he? And I think that kind of a compelling story allows the players to have the narrative space to add their narrative to the story.
If I
and that
may,
was one of my main points. Yep.
I think you also take the burden off of the filth whack player too when you do stuff like that.
Yep.
Because I don't whack's a little bit of a four-letter word here. I'm staring at my camera. I think a lot of people in a game with 2 win conditions, or with a win condition, like a lot of people are going to want to win a game, right?
Yeah.
But like it's not the only thing you want to do necessarily. Like it's all different levers and a different scale system within yourself. But what ends up happening when you do something wacky to even somebody like who wants to win, they just like their brain starts working. Like they're used to a certain ABC. I put the strong army down, I do the combo that my army does, and then I win. And like they're used to that progression. And when you jostle that around a bit, you kind of get them out of their comfort zone. Once they get out of their comfort zone, then they have to start thinking creatively. And once you get them thinking creatively, you've already got them on your side for narrative.
Well, and if I may, the thing about most, hard as nails whack players, right, is they don't know they're hard as nails, right? Most people don't go to 2,000 point tournaments all over the US, all over the world, and play competitive Age of Sigmar. And this is one of my other soapboxes, is I think 98% of players that play Age of Sigmar have never set foot in a tournament hall or played in an event. I think most players play with their friends. They might play in a basement, they might play in a game store, but as far as linking into this larger hobby community, I don't think the vast majority of players do that. So if you have a player who understands the way rules works, and they've been playing against their friend, and their friend is playing a list to beat their list because they only have 2 armies, and you show up to an event like Adepticon, you don't know the list that you brought is something that's going to smash people's faces off. You know that the list that you brought beats your friend, right? And that makes for good games because you don't want to have to buy a new army. You just want to have good games with your friend.
Yeah, and then your friend remixes his list because you're bringing this highly tailored list to their list, and this is how I play 40K because I never stepped foot in never stepped foot at Adepticon, nothing like that when I was still playing 40K. It was just my friends playing Tyranids, I'm playing Blood Angels. I'm like, this is Space Hulk every weekend, and so we're just bringing new heat against each other's lists, just torpedoing each other back and forth, I'm bringing all of the Meltabikes. I'm being told by the internet they're terrible. I'm like, yeah, but they kill his Carnifexes real fast. So, 100%, 100%. Chuck, I feel like you've been hanging on to something there for a minute that you wanted to interject.
I have a little bit. Yeah, I kind of want to share a little space in the soapbox, but with the inverse mentality. And I will see it. I shared with you my Terathi's timeline, which you can bring
it'll come up here. Yeah, it'll come up.
Yeah. Just because you're at a competitive event doesn't mean you can't be narrative, and that's definitely my MO. Like
I would also have something to say about that when we get to my thing. I agree with Chuck.
You can interject here too. Let Chuck
go
finish
ahead,
up, and then you jump in there, buddy. We're already down this rabbit hole.
Do you have the time right now?
Timeline's up right now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if you look at the timeline, like obviously there's Realms at War. That's a pure narrative event, kind of where it kick things off. But then you see Ren 4, which is a competitive event with a little bit of narrative injected. It's not a hyper competitive, but then there's Adepticon on this list, Wapaka, the Steel City, and then even if you look at the kind of like middle upper right, you'll see ETC 2019. Not that I went, but my good friend Roger, he's like, hey, I need 2 Hag Queens, and I know what you probably have in your bits box, and so I put together a couple Hag Queens, and then I painted them in his color scheme, which was red, white, and blue, and then on the little on like the
all right, go on.
on the back side of one, actually on the back side of both, like whether it was on the robe or actually on one, just like this little like tattoo on it, I put Terathi's rune because they're coming from her army. Wrote up a little narrative, and as soon as I went to ETC, I posted it online, and then I told the England ETC guys, I said, hey, make sure you let Roger know his narrative for his army. And he was blindsided. He loved it though. Like he came back to me and started doing narrative, and he is a very, very competitive focused person. So I'm just saying, like, the inverse is true, that you can go to competitive events, you can play to win with a hard as nails list, and still have a narrative.
It's true.
Especially in Age of Sigmar, it makes it so much easier with the way this game's set up in our battle tomes.
Oh, like we were talking about with the 4 Grand Alliances.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ways to to think about your army narratively. Even if you're like the toughest nails, I'm there to win, walk away with hardware. Martin, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, no, I was going to say it's like, because my main thing, especially from the gaming community I come from, like in the Northeast of the United States, especially when I was like a kid getting in like the high school, like a lot of the like Warhammer fantasy community was just like they either are practicing for a tournament or they are going to a tournament. So there's generally like that mindset of challenging yourself and thinking about optimizing what you have, what opponents you might see. And so I didn't really have access to people who would be like, let's get into trying to play siege games or narrative campaigns. So I felt like I naturally gravitated to, well, how do I want to express myself in terms of the story? And the answer is universally, it's like just put it on your models. You can have a competitive army list, even if it's a lot of like copy pasting, similar duplicating units. You can make those your own. You have the tools at your disposal. They don't come in one piece out of the box. Mm-hmm. You can make what you want and be expressive with it, no matter what type of game you're building your army for.
Right. No, I love it. GDad909 says, it's why I have always loved Flesh Eater Courts. Their narrative is bonkers good. I think that's one of those armies. They're just blank slate army. The whole thing, like, they're such a lore home run as an army, and it's just a darn shame I hate the sculpts. But then if you're like a great hobbyist, you're like, I see this as an opportunity to put myself on every model.
Sculpts, like, then I have talked to certain Games Workshop, like, and you can go to Adepticon or like an event, and they'll probably tell you the same thing. It's like, do what you want with our models, especially if you're going to have fun with them. I remember listening to Warhammer Weekly the other night, and Tom was talking how
he will still be here, by the way, everybody. He's just like...
Yeah. Anyway, where it's like, it's certain things, it's like, don't let what it looks like out of the box stop you from thinking about, like, well, say you even like the models, and I'll get into this a little more detail when we get to, like, just me talking about my army. It's, if you have an idea that doesn't exist in the stock kits, figure out how to make it. Mm-hmm. And don't be afraid to push yourself, because it's like, you cannot, like, say you mess up a model, eventually go get another one or turn it into, like, just don't be afraid to try and make your imagination into reality with the kits.
Paul, you got a thought there?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Here's the thing, right? If you buy a video game, you want to explore all the avenues, right? All the side quests if you want to finish the game, right? When you buy a model, that model is yours. It is your sandbox. Mm-hmm. So who's to say you ruin a model because you've done it the way that you want it to be, right?
I meant like ruined it, like you clipped something that you didn't want to. Yeah, that's what I mean.
But the thing is, the price that you paid, you didn't necessarily pay the price for the model. You paid the price for the hobby. You paid that price for the experience. And if you make a mistake on a $30 model that you're not going to make on a $120 model, more power to you, because you understand what you're looking to get out of this hobby.
I haven't touched Catacross yet because I'm paralyzed. So I'll make a mistake. You don't walk up to this statue of David and just like start fucking whipping out a crayon. I'm sorry, man.
But I mean, like, so when I made my Flesh Eater Courts, I used the ghoul sculpts, but then I cut off their left hooves instead and put Beastman heads on them, right? Mm-hmm. And then I painted them in 8 hours. And like, as far as their paint job quality would be considered terrible. But I've got a full-on army, right? And the thing is, speaking of someone who has spent $500 on one conversion, and I know Martin is getting up there on his as well, right? At some point,
and never again. It worked.
It's just a vampire
one-time thing.
So yeah, I'm only at the $320 level, I think.
Oof. That moment when you take the Dremel to a Chaos War Mammoth, and you just start drilling into its back because you want the Howdah to be... That's when you're living, man.
That's when you're alive.
This is
$500 model. But
this is
what
like
I want.
narrative conversion Fight Club.
Oh man,
This is when you're alive.
Yeah. I just wanted to destroy something beautiful, right? Like the line Ed Norton gives. Oh man, the concept of taking Shanzor here in chat gang. The concept of taking competitive / netlist armies and creating a narrative. I think is the best bridge between Worlds and AOS. I'd be hard pressed to disagree with that. I think anyway, they're not mutually exclusive, and that's one of the. If you listen to RantCast for any period of time, that is one of the biggest messages I try to deliver here. Is that play the game the way you love, and by the way, that doesn't mean if you love narrative and you love hobby and you love being a competitive trying to win hardware, those aren't exclusionary from each other. You can do all three. I mean, Adam Trunzo here in our local scene is probably tens across the board in all three. He's just excellent, and you're you can do that with this game. You have that capacity within yourself if that's the barrier, or within the community. I doubt that's the barrier, because there's a lot of us out there who will play a competitive hard as nails game with you, but also tell you about our sweet conversion with its own backstory.
I would say it's kind of like the thing, and maybe this is a future episode for some content ideas for you here.
This will be the third time you've given me content ideas. Go on.
Understand the event you're going to. So if you look at all my Teyrathi conversions, which that's the other picture, but don't worry about bringing it up yet. I have a lot that are on the appropriate size basis for a Slaughter Queen or a Hag Queen or a Cauldron, but then I have one or two that are on bigger bases because they were meant and intended strictly for a narrative event I went to. I made a model just for Holy Havoc. I can't use it anywhere else in my army because the base size is so much bigger and off than everything else. So it's figure out where you want your narrative to be. Are you going to go to competitive games and you still want to have a narrative, and make sure you do that? So it's understand where you're going, I guess, as far as an event.
Yeah. I mean, that's the first threshold for a lot of aspects of this game, is you gotta understand what you want out of it. I mean, it's as basic as when you walk up to the table, stranger or friend, what type of game are you looking to get today, right? You can do that check at the beginning of every step of this game, whether it's prepping for a tournament, prepping your narrative. I'll talk about one of my struggles in a moment. Who wants the stage next? I feel like you haven't talked a lot, Martin.
No, I've been. All right, so where do you want to start?
Where do I want to start?
Before you begin, I have to say to both Martin and Paul, you guys are. I applaud people who can hobby and do this type of thing at the same time. I can't. I have stuff all around me. I can't even touch it. I would be. It's one or the other.
I have been actually experimenting, because it's I'm getting ready for Lumineth, and I've been doing some color tests. Some are public, some are I
you're experimenting. You're not even just putting on the same thing in repetition.
Right, and I can't write it down yet, but I do have the palette saved. I think I finally found the armor recipe.
There you
go.
Anyway. Yeah, and he's been able to just jump right in on the conversations. I go to type one thing to chat gang so that I don't have to talk over a guest, and I have tuned out the last 20 seconds. I have no idea.
Unfortunately, I have all four of us on the screen. I cannot see the chat at all. So I apologize. Yeah, this is the first time I'm doing a Discord video chat, so sorry.
It works pretty decently though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One to be able to listen.
So we got a piece of paper here. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, so the thing that is probably up there is the Warhammer community article.
So I'll go ahead and grab that real quick. Yep, boom, right there.
Okay. Death was a thing. I'm normally I try and do the shiny good guy knights. They kind of squashed elves. I was like, what else is there? And then they took everything I loved about Space Marines and put them in the same setting as Teclis and Manfred with Stormcast. It was sign me up. Yeah. Because I do like Space Marines. And Stormcast look cooler than Space Marines, at least to me. They check a lot of boxes, the aesthetics that I want to paint. And I did have fun with them for a good long while. And then I was like, after like 2 years, I was kind of like getting tired of them. And then I had this idea to do a Legions of Gash army, and somewhere in a sketch pad somewhere from like 2 years ago, there's like a sketch. I can't really draw. I can, but it's enough to be like, well, what if Manfred von Karstein looked like a Viking?
I just love that thought.
Well, I was reading through the community article getting ready for this, and you actually a lot of your ideas, I started a sketch. Do you start with a sketch often, No.
Because I can't really draw. Well, maybe it's up here. A lot of it is up here. But one of the things that I would say is I guess, because there are certain things. Just one moment. I'm sorry. For some reason, Facebook is linked to my computer, and every time I get a personal message in a group chat, it makes a very loud noise.
Oh, just tell them to come watch RantCast live and feed the algorithms for me.
Come on, why is this still going? Anyway.
So while you punch your phone...
Now that I hear it's like this deafening ping. I'm so sorry.
No
one else can hear it, right?
Nope.
No, you're good, man.
Okay, cool. Right. So like I approach every new army to try and step a little bit out of my comfort zone from the previous army, and then because I tend to ruminate on it for months, if not years at a time, I want to take ideas, like I want to learn something as I do the army. And I definitely I came out of Stormcast a little bit unhappy with the visual storytelling, because originally I had these ideas of what I wanted the Stormcast to look like, and the Stormcast were great. I know some people have seen them online, some people have seen them at events. I'm not saying the Stormcast were bad. There were certain things specifically in visual storytelling that I was unhappy with. And I got on the phone with certain people, because I'm never afraid. I would say, number one, never be afraid in this hobby to reach out to people that you admire and ask for their input or how they made a cool thing you like. And I did that with the Raw Crew, Tyler Mengel, a handful of other hobbyists that I just deeply respect. And it's like, here's this cool thing that I've seen you do on the internet. Could you please tell me a little bit about how you made it so I can incorporate that knowledge into my own projects? Worst case scenario, they don't reply to you. Oh, well. You go to somebody else, because there's a lot of talented people in this community. Age of Sigmar specifically is very hobby driven, especially like on social media. Right. And not gonna judge me one way or another.
Suck at 40K.
Yeah.
I'll plant the flag.
I'm not gonna plant that flag.
Potter,
Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway. So I had this idea. It's like because my main love is high elves. And at the time, when I was starting the Death Army, I was prepared for High Elves to either be gone forever or just not come back for years and years. Luckily, I finished it right on time, because by the time I was ready to be done the Death Army, here come the Lumineth Realm Lords, happy camper. Anyway, we're rewinding about 7 or 8 months where it's like, I didn't know that was actually a thing.
I remember you sent me a message, and you're like, right when OBR were about to come out with, and you're kind of like really deep in your army, you're like, I think I just picked the wrong time to get it on LON type thing.
Oh yeah, no, I because one of the things I wanted with Legions of Nagash was also like how to become a better gamer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still on that quest, because unfortunately it did not work out well, because I picked like Legions of Nagash was like near the top for a while, and the army that I took to a GT in November was ultra competitive. Like I want to say Adepticon 2018, and like well through 2018, not at the end of 2019. It got destroyed. It is pretty, like on paper it seems all right, but just like how other armies work and what they're good at killing.
Yeah.
Right. It's but that's fine. Like
it happens.
And that's another thing with the elves, where it's like everyone's going to be on equal footing when this army comes out. We're all going to figure out together what's good and what's not. I already want to build and paint all of it, so it's a win-win for me.
I love seeing other people get the OBR effect, which is like how I felt. I'm like, I know I'm buying every box in this army, and whether it's good or not.
Yeah, he just won it all.
Yep.
Right. But anyway, so I had this idea, and one of the things that I would say is like a core thing for me, because I come from a background where my local community and regional community is very much match play, competitive, tournament oriented, but I still have that itch to express myself within the story. Is like I want as much of that to appear in the models as possible, because it's like more often than not, my opponents will be like, will it's not their hobby. Their hobby is figuring out the tactics and the strategy and bettering themselves and enjoying just the pure strategy of the game. But I want that narrative to exist, if at the very least for me, but for also for other people. So visual storytelling, I think, is important.
So visual storytelling,
right?
Yeah,
For me, when I created the Death Army, because when I say it's like, well, what if Manfred was a Viking? There are certain things, if you really want to be there, I would say there are two types of narrative armies. There is a narrative army where it is just about what you want. It is not necessarily canon, or it uses things. A good friend of mine, his name's Mike. He created a beautiful Khorne army, but he's always about crazy stuff. Like he'll chop up Forge World stuff. He'll add there was a Elder Scrolls big collector's edition statue of one of the Daedric princes, and he cast some of their weapons, and he's like adding stuff where it's like put Mortarion's wings on a Gorgon, and then gave it one of the Bloodthirster faces, and then gave it like third-party weapons and stuff, and it's like that is how he expresses himself. The narrative is like it's like, this is not just Khorne, this is my Khorne, or this is my crazy idea. It doesn't really have to fit into the world. And then there are people who want it to be as canon or as much of verisimilitude as possible.
Well, if I may, you mentioned something a little bit earlier, like when like, okay, the sculpts aren't to your stand. They're not what you want, so you do whatever with them. Like ghouls was the example we're using a little bit earlier. So you want to make the ghouls look like they are the fallen Bretonnians, and so you just bash the shit out of it, you paint the hell out of them, and now you've got Bretonnians. Mm-hmm. What happens when you love the sculpts already and you struggle to like convert them?
Then you don't have to convert them.
Okay.
It's conversions are not required. Someone's pet.
Yeah. This is Rose. This is my cat Rose.
Hi, Rose.
Named after the Doctor Who character.
Nice.
Okay, so we got a couple of Whovians in the audience.
Anyway, so like if we want to talk about Warhammer Fantasy, because maybe then I'm like the only person at the table. It's like I had no problem coming up with my own lore for characters in Warhammer Fantasy. I think no character is too small to make your own. Like I had a prince, which I made because one of the things I didn't like about High Elves was that there are not a lot of women knights. Like I wanted like a woman warrior that wasn't just like a mage, and it was just something I wanted, and I created this character where I ended up having to sculpt a lot of the it was like a little bit of like inspired by like a Witcher costume, like a little bit of armor, a little bit of gambeson. I used the Coven Throne head because that was just like, it looked like it had this nice ponytail that went across, and then I gave her a wet no bit was too small for me to use and repose to make a custom character, and it was just, she was an elf prince, but it looked like no one else's, and it also looked like it fit within the Warhammer world. That checked all of the boxes for me. Did she have a name? I don't think that mattered as much as what it looked like. If I may now just get back to, because I have the little paper there. One of my key inspirations, especially as I've learned from the Death Army and go into Lumineth, is trying to make it not so much like try and make it as like naturalistic as possible. It's key world building. Like you want to implement degrees of immersive realism instead of forcing like every once in a while in certain fantasy like television or books where it's like the character has to turn to the audience and give them a wink, like just buy into it, just believe that this universe exists,
suspend your disbelief,
right?
and
Suspend your disbelief. If you get to a point where your models are like, you're almost like you're painting historical miniatures, you're not painting fantasy miniatures anymore, you're trying to think about how those textures might actually like look on certain creatures, like what would their skin actually be like. If you wanted to think about for a minute what for cities of Sigmar, like what a regular state troop would look like, what the leather would be like, if there's dirt and stuff like that, and making up your own heraldry and how that would be represented on the models, what the material their clothing is made of, and you can get into all of these things that if you without any conversions, you can already implement a degree of immersive realism to your models that not everyone may expect, and it can just enhance the impact that your models have when someone looks at them.
See.
So getting back to the death, which I assume is still on screen. What's the first?
No, I've got Bloodbear up here right now. So.
Oh. All right. So he was the first model, and I wanted this Viking sort of like, it's a little bit of Celtic lore, a little bit of Scandinavian, but I still wanted just a little bit of like the true like canon Warhammer stuff in there. So because a lot of it is sculpted, I had to teach myself sculpting for this. It was just like, this does not exist. I have to make it myself. So I started looking at certain references, like the father from How to Train Your Dragon, Stoic the Vast, I think his name is, like that body type. And it was like I looked at like certain things like that because that it's a very cartoonish body type. Like he's like a giant pear-shaped man with legs like as thin as quarters. Like it fits kind of like in the Warhammer, like it's silly like that. It fits.
Yeah.
But then
if this guy's fighting orcs, you're like, yeah, this tracks.
Right. So I just started looking at sprues, like what can be a base form. So I found like the Nurgle bodies. It's like I want a fat, bald, giant bearded monster of a man who was also a vampire. And I came up with, it's like he is the blood bear. He is a bear-sized man, and it's like I wanted a physical, terrifying presence to replace the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, which can be a little classical, and I wanted something that challenged the tropes while also fitting in the Warhammer setting. So I got like the dwarf, like a lot of my vampires, like the Blood Knights too, have dwarf heads because those beards go down half their chest. It really has this visual impact. And then I painted that pale skin, and he only has the gold eyes. And then I sculpted jewelry and things that would fit. And I drawn a little bit of history too. He has this brooch on one of his shoulders, which is I looked at a museum. It's like an 8th century style of Viking brooch, but instead of the crest for I forget whatever the crest was actually. I put in there Archon's the jet, his symbol of office, which is it's a hexagonal gem of black jet. Just in case this army was supposed to be for Legion of Sacrament, to tie him as one of the Black Disciples for Archon. Now, he's showing his loyalty to the Legions of Nagash, the canon Warhammer stuff, but in his way, which is this Dark Ages style, like masonry. And then it's like, boom. Oh, and the last thing, because I wanted a little extra color flair, and because of all of the rust and aged metal, I decided that all of the lances would be made of soul energy. And so he has at the end of his thing, which is the Manfred sickle. It's just made of this, and it has this nice shock of blue and black color. Or just it's mainly like it reads as blue to contrast the rest of the model.
Yeah, you got orange, and so you go blue to get
that, right. That and like you already have all of the pale organic textures compared to the vampires, like oranges and rusts, metallic textures.
So you're very much about the visual story. Like this is really where, I mean, we saw it with Paul. taking the rules, bringing the rules through the narrative into the visual.
Yeah.
You go really hard for the visual.
Right, because a lot of times if I'm playing someone like a stranger at an event, I want my army to stick in their mind as that narrative, and like I don't want to be able to have to tell someone anything for people to get their imagination going with what stuff is in my army. And I used him as the cornerstone for like the army aesthetic, and I started branching out from there. And that carries through in everything, I think, except the chain rasps, because the chain rasps are two-piece snap fit models, and there's nothing really I could do with them in terms of conversions. I didn't feel like it was appropriate either.
Well, I remember you were early on in the stages of talking about LON and stuff like that, and one of the messages you had sent me is you wanted to have visually distinct. You wanted to have that, like, it wasn't just for you. You didn't just want to make a hard as nails, busted, mono, or like you didn't want to be like all ghosts and Grimgas, and you wanted to have some ghosts and some skeletons and some. You wanted to have that like the full Castlevania, the full Monty.
Yes.
Of each thing.
And so I thought about, like, even before I made an army list, I looked at each unit in the book and said, how can I make this fit this army theme? And sometimes the answer is change nothing, paint it this way. So for like the simple things would be like for the Grave Guard. The Grave Guard are the honored champions, because it's like it had this sort of thing where the chain rasps in the Nighthaunt lore are the lowest of the low. They are like the souls of criminals and thieves and just petty BS. That is like they are the dregs souls of the afterlife.
Nagash has a really great like Hades-esque like poetic punishment for everybody.
Right. So in the army, when I finished up the list, there are two big blocks of troops. So you have the lowest of the low, which are the chain rasps. And then you have Grave Guard, and I wanted them in the lore to be like these exalted, sort of like, and I imagine this thing where the champions of these cultures across centuries, if a warrior died a noble death, they got buried in the special crypt. And at the time, like the Wolf Time, or like basically like the Necroquake, they would all march out of this crypt to represent all of the heroes of this culture. Fighting as one unit. And so I tried my best. Unfortunately, the Grave Guard, they have cool costumes, but their sculpts are very dated and very Warhammer Fantasy.
I like that you got Krell in here, by the way.
So that's one of my cornerstone things that carries over from Warhammer Fantasy, especially when I got into High Elves, is that there were certain units which were just terrible. There were certain characters that you just never took. And I always wanted them to be expressed in some way, because I wanted to paint everything a little bit. And I would find ways of taking characters no one gave a shit about and implementing them as unit champions.
We all gave a shit about Krell. Come on. No, continue.
Right, but I meant in terms of rules.
I know.
So like Corhill would become the champion of my White Lions.
Don't you talk about Corhill. Don't you talk about Corhill.
Wait, it's fighting time. Those are fighting words.
Yeah.
I like them all. It's just
this
like
character no one gave a shit about Corhill.
Yeah.
The end times, man. It's awesome in the end times.
Anyway.
Oh man.
You get what I'm
Toss
saying.
Us out a little bit.
I know what you're saying. We're just
and unit champions to me was a chance to almost like make a character even in miniature. Where it's like I wanted to make my own unit champion.
That hero quality.
Right, and just let's scratch my itch for like just painting extra characters.
I love that. I'm gonna steal that, by the way.
So I use Krell as the unit champion for the Grave Guard. I use the Guardian of Souls as the unit champion for the Chain Rasps. Yeah, which is in there.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, right there.
And right, so we have that.
I love the red, by the way. That red is really striking with your color.
That is all Nocturna. I don't work for them, but these are my favorite paints, the Nocturna paints. Anyway, I just showed a box. I'm not probably even on screen. Anyway,
you are. But the audio.
I appreciated it.
Yeah. Anyway, and then I started thinking about other aspects of like what the society would be like, and I thought about like this. I was fixated in this idea of death druids, where you had like I started getting into the Celtic stuff where the nature and the mother goddess stuff. But what would that sort of mythology be like if Nagash is your exalted god? And I got into the necromancers on there, the one with the face.
I pulled up your necromancer.
Yeah. So if
she got like the crow staff.
So that's 2 Underworlds characters. It's just basic, and then like I gave a high elf knife to her, and it was just very easy. Like there was
almost too easy.
Right. It was like just change her head, make that hand a weapon, boom. I used historically accurate, or at least we believe is historically accurate face paint for the character. That was a tough face to paint, by the way. With the eyes, like I know it's probably you can't really tell on the Warhammer community page, like, but if I send you like the actual JPEG of that photograph, you can see the highlights in there. I was like, I can't do this on more than one person.
The blurry Warhammer community photo I have is already beyond my ability, so I'm impressed. It's
got it. Anyway, so it's like I tried to paint this character and give her life, where it's like this is like an up and coming sort of. I was tired of the necromancer looking like this old, decrepit. Yeah. So it's like she's this 20-something like up and coming necromancer who, by some way or another, has been pulled into this grand host of Nagash and just turning the trope a little bit on its head. And then we have the Vampire Lord. He was kind of last minute because I originally had the Knight of Shrouds in there, and it was like I had to come up with a Vampire Lord guy. And
I like that you tied in your sort of soul energy weapon things in for his wings.
Yeah.
Almost like these are conjured wings and not.
Yes. I just despised the idea of the mutant wings. I wanted it to be a little bit more low fantasy and say if he's gonna have wings, he's gonna summon them magically. Instead, I just didn't like the idea of having a sort of like mutant guy in the army.
I for one dig the Legacy of Kain Blood Omen wings, but continue.
It was just this is my personal taste for this army.
I know, man.
All right, anyway,
just making video game references, all right?
Well, he's basically he's basically like the Dragonborn. Like I gave him the Warcry helmet, which was just like this looks like the Skyrim helmet.
Yeah.
I put him on. I gave like the Khorne body, and then he's Gotrek's weapon and Manfred's weapon, and he's just leaping off this pole. His blood coming down. I was just, and I tried a little bit of Celtic like sort of tattoo on his one arm. It works. It works well enough.
So fast forwarding a little bit, like you said that like you go into each one of your projects kind of like to learn a lesson, to challenge yourself and learn a lesson. What was the lesson you were trying to learn here? What did you learn going into now your next project? I just assume is going to be elves, pointy elves.
Yes, working on right now.
Right.
So I would say I wanted to learn 2 things. It was weathering and textures, and improving visual storytelling. And I learned from that. Like I think I learned a lot from how I can implement visual storytelling into my hobby, and it's helped me teach other people, like, because people ask about the army, and I'm able to give a little bit of the spiel to other people. And the thing I've learned about weathering is that it's very tough to paint something that looks realistically dirty. It's tougher to do that than it is to paint something kind of crisp and clean. And I don't want to do it again for a unit of like 30 to 40 skeletons. No, thank you.
Fair enough. So Andrew Yells here real quick said, Wild Army. I have no desire to convert anything. If you ever convert an extra army and need to get rid of it, send it to me to paint, please.
So I will say this: conversions are not required. I have been judges for events. I run my own tournaments as well, and sometimes when I consult on paint packets, it's like, well, we want conversions to like. You can give points for conversions, but I don't feel like they should be absolutely required, especially when.
Go ahead, finish your thought.
Finish your thought, and then Paul's got to jump in here.
No, I understand. It's like you should be able to do as many conversions as you want, and I like the idea of rewarding army-wide conversions, but I feel like that skill isn't something that everyone has at their disposal, or they're like, I like the models as they are. like
I'm
kit purists.
I'm struggling with Ossiarch Bone Reapers to find conversion opportunities. A lot of it's a lot of it's coming on my basing, or like really subtle like kit swaps. So like my banners on my Mortek Guard, I was putting together some Cavalos Death Riders. I'm like, these guys have like sweet ass crows circling their banners. I'm like, can I just take this and put it on my Mortek Guard? I'm like, hey, it works. It's perfect. Like,
yeah,
you know,
and I
like
was the same way with the Stormcast, where I did a little bit of head swaps and some weapon swaps, and that was it. So it's like, I feel like if you are a kit purist, I recommend just digging deeper into the story, or making up like envisioning your own to change or implement the colors and like the heraldry. I would say is the best way to put it, because like the Song of Ice and Fire miniatures tend to be one-piece miniatures, right? But you can paint them like any of like the vassal houses, and like introduce your own sort of take on the lore of that game using just one-piece models. So if you're a kit purist, you can still be a visual storyteller.
Fair enough. Paul?
I would say, Andrew, what do you call that Photogoric spell you have on your display board, if that is not a conversion?
Oh, well, that's...
I'm just going to lay it out there.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry. I thought Paul was about to like fight me for this sort of like.
Well, like
understandable. That's a typical reaction for me.
I would I actually struggled getting my paint scheme together for my Bone Reapers, because the first message someone sent me when I was coming up with like themes and stuff was that like don't paint them purple. The first thing he just sent me a text. Like it didn't even like I wasn't talking to him about hobby. I hadn't like mentioned it really. Just like first it just. Don't paint your Bone Reapers purple. Just sends that message to me straight. And I'm like, I was already like, but I love purple. And so the other thing is like, Haywo has really helped me sort of tackle my hobby a lot. And he's very much like, if it's fur, it should look like fur. If it's leather, it should look like leather. He's in that vein. And I'm like, well, I wanted to paint him with purple armor. And I'm just like sitting here struggling. To like come up with my scheme, and then eventually I just like, I did my test model. I'm like, I'm just gonna make it fucking purple. Fuck everybody. I just like get mad. And I start painting it purple.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So what I'm working on right now is an elf, and I want to maximize contrast and stuff. And I was like, one of my main inspirations so far was one of Elrond's costumes in the Hobbit movies, where he has this red tinted gold armor. It's only in one scene when he saves the dwarves in the first movie, and I was painting true metallic that true metallic scheme on a few test models, and it was just not reading well. So I've decided to just paint it like this this wine or plum sort of color, and just as that color. Don't be afraid to think about how bone would look for the Bone Reapers if it was painted that color, because paint does chip, it interacts with the world in a certain way, and you can the textures and your imagination can run wild in terms of making those textures appear realistic on the bone that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, my thought was that they so what you're saying is to essentially like go with my if I were to do it for their bones, do my techniques what I do for bones with like my screaming skull and my shades and my dry brushing and stuff, but do that with purple. Yeah, cool. Except I did it for their armor, and I came up with a whole bullshit spiel for why it's purple, which is the amethyst. You see, the amethyst wind is the death wind, and that is purple. And since they are shaping bone with their crazy magics into whatever form they wish. That death magic just gets into like their armor, and so it gets this purple tinge. But now I need to become a better hobbyist and paint it to look like it's not just purple armor, but rather that it is ensorcelled purple, right? And that's advanced strats in like 2 years when I'm good.
Yeah, but. I would just add, because I just consulted my notes again, and one of my main inspirations is like the guys at Weta Workshop. If you ever watched the original Lord of the Rings trilogy behind the scenes, it's just
you're talking the cartoon, amazing. You're talking the
extended. extended editions.
Yeah. I think he was about to make a Ralph Bakshi joke, but he couldn't remember the name.
All right.
Wizards? Are we talking about Wizards?
Right. So it's this whole idea.
Opportunity passed.
Right. It's this whole idea of if you really want to get into the narrative, even of the narrative that Games Workshop has written, because there's this whole idea of balancing how much of your own story do you want to tell versus enjoying the canon story that Games Workshop has given you as in terms of like that sandbox. It's definitely about the cultural inheritance and sort of like this art history. Like Warhammer, we interact with the world of Warhammer exclusively through the strategy battle game. So that small window you see of the army and the armor and the costumes of the characters that you've made as miniatures is but the smallest window. And there's this wider there's supposed to be this wider universe which led to the creation of the army that you're using in a game. And trying to bring in more of that context can really supercharge how you paint and present your miniatures. You don't have to convert them at all. You can. Like one of the things I'm going to try and do with the elves is I want to say just like light touch conversions, just to try and bring in more of that wider world to show that this is but a taste of the culture of the Lumineth. And you can apply that to orcs, to flesh eater courts, to your own custom idea, like Ricky Smith's Cities of Sigmar army, the Midnight City, I believe it's called.
Yep.
Or Steve Foot's Skaven army, something like that.
Or the Floating Market.
Right.
As well. I mean,
right. And those things exist in the lore. You can choose to just completely make up your own thing, but if you really enjoy the core Warhammer story, don't be afraid to bring in more influences from those books into your models.
Okay. All right.
Actually, Paul, sorry.
Paul, go ahead.
So, to further on that, right? Like, we're all talking about narrative as creating our narrative, converting our models, right? If it is just a frame of mind, it's nothing other than that, right? And we have this great selection of Black Library novels now. The background of the Battle Tome. If you've never read the background in your Battle Tome, please go read it.
Oh
right?
my God!
Since Tom isn't here yet, I'm gonna go and spruik. So like, listen to the Mortal Realms. Right? Sorry, I'm spruiking myself, but like, go listen to our Battle Tome reviews. Go listen to Black Library. Go listen to Garage Hammer. Go listen to 2 Plus Tough. Right?
Well, no, don't go listen to Garage Hammer. Because we hate them, canonically speaking.
I like you, David.
It's a joke.
They are Warhammer heroes.
It's a
joke. Warhammer heroes.
I have to. I was about to say it's like I can't actually participate in that because apparently David has been a friend of the family for about like 10, 12 years.
I just played with David at PACA. We did AOS the musical. And I told him about the rolling joke. One person in chat once said something like, "Oh, I don't really watch Garage Hammer," and it happened during the spiel of like I said like I never read Harry Potter really because it was just before my time, and then that's what started the whole I hate Harry Potter, Star Wars, and Garage Hammer. Is it just all happened around the same time, and so like anytime we get a new thing that I hate, it's just.
Canonically, it's you love Dave, you love Alex, you just don't like Garage Hammer.
Right? Yeah, they're great guys. Like fantastic.
They're fantastic guys.
Once I said something to Alex where like I was like, oh man, yeah, but I'm terrible at Warhammer. And he just like put a hand on my back in the most purest human moment. And he's like, you're great at Warhammer. What are you talking about? I'm like, and it was not in the Alex persona. And I was just like. I love this guy. In that moment, it was just like, this is one of the best guys.
I really needed that. Dad.
I'm like, I did. I'm like, thanks, Dad. Like, man, I was just like, yeah. No, we actually do love Garage Hammer. Go listen to them right now. Turn off RantCast. Come back in a couple minutes.
Not the Mortal Realms. I see how it is, huh?
Yeah. Actually, to go back on topic real quick.
Yeah,
The point that's
Wait,
being
we
made.
do that?
We do that? No,
Oh,
we've been holding pretty firm to the topic tonight.
Painting wise, you can also create some narrative in your army, not necessarily with conversion, as they were saying. So an example is my Daughters of Cain army, which, as you know, I'm going to keep going back to over and over again. But if you look at my entire army, with the exception of one model, well, two models, all the eyes are painted just pure white. I just want a pure white, like that fanatical look from it, unless you look at Marathi. She's the only one that has pupils. I gave her sort of like cat eyes just to be fun, and it was a little bit easier to paint. But also, when we get into it, my army narrative is not necessarily fully against Marathi, but it's kind of opposed along the same line as, like, it's following Marathi, but it's also kind of like butting heads with her. Mm-hmm. So I wanted her to blend in with the army, but I wanted to have one thing, which I did it on the eyes. She doesn't look right if you really sit and look at it and look at all the eyes.
This is Morathi and not Teyrathi yet, right?
Morathi, not Teyrathi. Yeah, Teyrathi and Marathi are friends, not friends.
No, this is the rivals.
Rivals, yes.
Mephisto, if I send you an image through Discord, can you put it on the screen?
It's best to send it to me through Twitter right now for me to get.
All right, then I'll send it to you through Twitter.
Cool.
Because some people saw I posted I ended up in this at the right time, starting on an elf project, because I had planned for elves to possibly be years away. Mm-hmm. So there are certain things, because my elf project is so big, it's going to take a few years. There's certain Cities of Sigmar stuff as well. So I have been working on a character because Chuck got me into the idea of, and so I have basically my Vegeta to Teyrathi is Goku.
I didn't pick that. He's the one that chose. He chose me to be Goku.
I'm just gonna go ahead and spam Mr. Meth not a weeb real quick so people know in my chat.
I just sent you the character art via Twitter.
Right on.
Yeah. So there's. Oh.
Speaking of not a weeb, wait till you see my current Teyrathi commission art piece that's happening. My wife is doing it, and she does a very anime type style. It's gonna be a chibi Teyrathi.
Is it gonna be over 9,000?
Chibi Teyrathi, I love it. Wow, this is pretty sick.
So a friend of mine painted that. He's not really a Warhammer fan. I've posted on Twitter how you can get in touch with him. He does commissions and stuff. He also does professional work. So his name's Cleveland Mosher. But he's not really unfortunately, he's probably not going to listen to this or anything. But so that is a character by the name of Prince Nights. What?
Prince what? Go on.
Prince Nightscar. As you can tell, he's
Nightscar,
yeah. And so he's going to be a recurring character, because the idea ultimately is to have enough painted elf stuff that I can use them in multiple armies, in multiple allegiances. Mm-hmm. So for Cities of Sigmar, possibly the Lumineth and maybe armies in the future, or Grand Alliance,
is to
sort of loadouts.
Keep that thread going through all your armies, right?
Right. And so there are going to be certain characters who are supposed to original and wholly my own.
Right.
And he's so he can be a wizard or a character in Cities of Sigmar, possibly Lumineth or something like that.
So this is you kind of expanding from just your visual style to actually fixing your narrative on a character.
Right. And that was yeah. And but I'm also
this is the Chuck influence, right?
Right. But he will eventually be a miniature. I have to figure out how I'm going to paint that and whatnot, because that visual looks very striking in 2 dimensions. 3 dimensions, we're going to figure it out.
Right. It's very cool right here too, so you're going to have to warm it up, I think.
Huh?
Yeah, it's very cool. The image is very cool here.
Yeah.
2D, so you'll have to warm that up.
Because that art is based on my favorite artist that Games Workshop employs. It's a man named Paul Dainton. If you just look up him and Warhammer art, all of the stuff he's done over the years comes up. It's a lot of iconic pieces. And my friend, the artist, I showed him Paul Dainton's work, and he really hooked onto that, and then tried to employ that sort of imitation impasto. A lot of the fake brush strokes and paint buildup that you can see if you really get in close and look at that. And so stuff like that is going to start coming out in terms of the characters are going to look like their own creations and not just this is a really cool interpretation of the mage kit that comes out for this army,
right?
And then going from there. So I have definitely big plans on how to implement that sort of storytelling with the elves.
Man,
I really can't wait to get started on those kits.
I can't wait to see the progress on Twitter. So last question, then we're gonna move on to Chuck because I know he's just got this info dump. His brain, I can see it like just under the surface here. Are you puffy pants? Yes or no? Yay or nay on the puffy pants?
Was that to me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's Teclis's pants. His pants game. Are they on point? Would you say that's pants game 100?
I like the costume. I think it's fine. I think the layout of the miniatures could use some work. I mean, it is a three-dimensional.
We're only seeing it in one, like the one.
Yeah, if you look in the trailer, it's clearly supposed to occupy more of a three-dimensional space because they probably had a challenge of, well, this guy is not mutated. Like it's basically just a 54 millimeter elf guy.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do to not just put him on a 60 mil base? Because then he's very hard to get to. It becomes like the Gulliman problem in 40K, where one of the most powerful characters in the faction is on such a small footprint, it's easy to hide him. And it doesn't work for Games Workshop's narrative, especially in Age of Sigmar.
See, I had hoped that they'd have just said, this guy's a god now, and he'd have just been a counterpoint to Nagash, just floating and sorcelled in magic.
I understand
could have been
that.
a 12-foot tall, quote-unquote, 10-foot tall, 20-foot tall god.
Well, technically, Nagash is about the same size. Like a lot, I remember I said that on Twitter.
Isn't really a god, so I mean,
what?
Yeah, we got that thing going on.
What? Throwing things at my screen right now. How dare you?
Over. End the stream now.
All right, man. All right.
Anyway, can I just finish?
Yeah, finish it off. Yeah. Finish it off. Yeah.
Right. The last time Teclis got a costume was basically like, I get he got a sculpt in like 2003, but his iconic image is older than I am. It was like from 1992. So you have to update it somehow. And I like it. Right.
I mean, to be fair, little green stuff, you could turn it back into a robe.
Sure.
Pretty easily. If that's your thing.
And it's just like, well, what do? They made a decision, and in terms of like,
I actually like the sculpt personally.
I think it's fine.
I think it did the.
I can understand what this work for people.
I want to. I got to see it in 3 dimensions because where he is floating. I'm like, okay, but once I see it in person, it'll. I'm a little bit ambivalent, leaning towards, like, I can see this working. I had wished he had been like the 20-foot tall, 14-karat gold, like, statuesque feature, like a counterpoint to Nagash, an order version of that. I actually really like the weird monster dude. Like, when you go too weird, I know you're in the right space, and I think they went too weird with it, and I'm all for that. Go too weird, please. Yeah, Paul, what's up, man?
Picture this: Teclis's torso, Ilariel's legs, job done.
Oh.
Alariel's legs on anything.
Yeah, job
she
done.
Doesn't skip leg days.
She does not skip leg day. Speaking of not skipping leg day, a guy who's never skipped leg day a day in his life, Chuck, what do you got for us for today? He's like, that is a lie.
Put Ilariel's legs.
No,
on,
actually, it's not. I do.
Torso on Teclis's legs.
I do leg day too much, actually.
You had extra leg days in. Like, a man who has extra leg days, Chuck Moore.
Actually, yeah, in the Gaines workshop WhatsApp chat today,
my
they were talking about some new people.
By the way. My favorite pun.
They were talking like, you should mix up body parts, you shouldn't do legs twice in a row, and I'm sitting there like, I'm on my 4th day of legs. Because I can't. I'm just gonna stay quiet.
That's where all the power comes from.
Yeah.
All right, so you actually we got talking back on the first episode of RantCast I had you on. We couldn't help but talk about Teyrathi and your personal narrative. And one thing I've personally struggled with injecting my narrative into the story, and as we've been talking a little bit here, I think I kind of identified my problem. I grew up in the old world, Warhammer Fantasy Battle, where I kind of wasn't allowed to have my story in there. If I had a character if it was Vlad von Karstein, it was Vlad von Karstein's story. I was running Vlad. I wasn't running. And that was one of the first things I said when I played my Legions of Nagash army, is like, oh yeah, that's Nagash. Like, I'm not running someone else. Like, that is Nagash. I mean, yeah, it's an avatar of, and he's got several throughout the world, but, you know, I struggled with that. And you basically just went like all the way with infusing your narrative into your army. It had no problems like fixing that point on a single character, saying, no, this isn't Morathi, this is Teyrathi. And we did talk a little bit about that before, but why don't you go ahead, and now you've got the spotlight, you've got the full soapbox moment, kind of take us through your narrative, your army, and your sort of tenets.
Well, I guess to start, I mean, it is a known thing. Like, I love Taylor Swift music. She's a great person. So Teyrathi is based on Taylor Swift mixed with Morathi. So it started as like this funny little thing. It wasn't anything super serious because I was kind of a carryover from the 8th edition. It's like, okay, it's just loose, it's fun, whatever. But then it started gaining more ground. Specifically when I decided to go to Realms of War, a pure narrative event. Those guys were immense in helping me like learn how to craft narrative and go like, oh, this can be a real thing. And sure, there's the meme there, but like the new art I'm getting commissioned by my wife actually, and then all stuff going forward is based upon the model, not necessarily based upon the great Stone Monk art that he did, where it was Taylor Swift in Morathi's outfit, which is fun and I love it and it's a beautiful piece, and I still make plenty of use of it. But but saying like you can start anywhere. I started as this loose kernel of an idea, and it was like, oh wait a minute, let's continue down this thread. Let's make it real within the Mortal Realms, which for me, creating an original character and setting it within an army, like that was the start. And then it just kind of grew over time, and I was just like, well, what would her motivation be? Like, so if you have a character, they need to have motivations. And the easiest way, actually, I think I talked to Martin about this in the private chat months ago, the easiest way to develop a motivation for a character is, well, who's opposing that character? And I was like, well, it'd be interesting, Daughters of Cain, dark elf type mentality. Let's have Morathi be the antagonist. Okay, well, what would Teyrathi oppose Morathi, who's she's clearly part of this army? Oh well, she finds out that Morathi has the Heart of Cain and is suppressing Cain from coming back, and she's like, oh no, we gotta stop this.
Right.
So I made Morathi the antagonist, protagonist, but they both want the same thing, like in different ways. So it doesn't really oppose it, and I can put Morathi in an army with Teyrathi, and it's still okay. I might say, like they might not be happy about it per se,
right.
But there's also the overarching thing if you read some of the lore that actually, I'll get to that point next, but if you read into the lore and a lot of the old Dark Elf lore, like some names I use for Teyrathi's early creation, as far as a specific mage, Drusilla, who interact with her. Well, Drusilla was the name that Morathi used in the old world when she was seducing Tyrion. So technically, Teyrathi's whole story is
also
being...
Also a great Smashing Pumpkins song, but continue.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So essentially, if you read that little kernel, and it's like, if you miss it, it doesn't change anything for what people will see in my narrative. But if you catch that little kernel, and I'm kind of spoiling it for people now, and you know that history, then you know that ultimately Teyrathi's whole story is being controlled by Morathi.
Yeah.
So I'm even though I'm opposing Morathi, I'm not getting in the way of the overall lore, which I think is a good tenet. Whenever you're creating a custom character to lead your army, is be part of the world you're in, but don't actually be so far against it that it doesn't make sense. Like it wouldn't make sense if Teyrathi ever gained more power than Morathi. It would make zero sense to me. So she'll always maybe be like a few steps behind at most, but.
And this lets her be pretty awesome
yeah.
on the table, right? Like when you're not experiencing any like sort of disconnect between like Teyrathi going out and like kicking a bunch of like Stormcast ass, because like she's powerful, but in terms of the ambitions of the story, she's never gonna usurp or overpower these iconic characters that really drive Games Workshop's narrative.
No, I mean, if you even look at the recent the Gotrek audio dramas, Gotrek encounters Alariel, and Alariel manhandles him. So, like, this amazing or worst slayer in the world who you think can take on anything and has. Oh, well, he's still up against a true god right now, so it's like, what, and Marathi's not a true god, but, she's working towards it, so,
She's got, she's a strong, independent mermaid. She's a mer snake.
But yeah, I mean, define your character's motives, define the goals, figure out how they can work within the army, and don't be afraid that, like, I call my army the Teyrathian cult, because they worship, like, that whole army, they worship Teyrathi more than they worship Cain and Marathi. It's kind of like like, they don't talk about it, but they talk about it type thing. Like, you don't want to just overtly say, like, this is who we actually worship. Not that it's getting her any power,
yeah,
so it's like motivations.
Like we don't really talk about Kraith too much.
Oh, I don't. Kraith is the best.
No. I just throwing shade, man. I love it. Before we move too far past this point, this notion of like starting with like kind of a fun or a tongue-in-cheek narrative, I think that's an understated good way to get into writing your own narrative. Is having like a fun or a silly thing that you then expand upon. Paul, what do you got, man?
So I was going to make the exact same point. If you look at some of the old miniatures that they have for Warhammer Fantasy, right? Like, I have a Bretonnian army, and I also have Robin Hood, Little John, and Friar Tuck. Now, they didn't call them Robin Hood, Little John, and Friar Tuck, but you look at those miniatures, and that's exactly what they are, right? And this is a time-honored Warhammer tradition to take the things that are fun and to put them in there, right? Mm-hmm. And Age of Sigmar disguises it a bit more than it did before, but some of them are direct pulls from all these different sources.
Yeah.
And so when you take, Taylor Swift and say, but I'm going to make her into Warhammer, right? That's exactly how the game started.
Yeah.
So they took this character and they're like, but how do I make him Warhammer, right? How do I make him metal, right? Yeah. Like, and that's what they did. So that's a classic way of doing it. It's much fun.
Well, this is the a different version of filtering the artist, right? When I say every story I've ever written has been me taking myself and like turning it or twisting it or in some way or not or another. You can do that with characters, taking a character that you know in pop culture. In the case of Taylor Swift, or like an existing art that you love. If you're obsessed with Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII, and like you want to make your Gotrek Cloud Strife, and like start he's got the Breaker Axe instead of the Buster Sword. Go whatever it takes to get you like sort of on the miniature level thinking about that character, and then from there you can play with the dials. You can turn it up, turn it down, do stuff. I don't want to forget to mention that we've got Sean here in chat. Sean Zor on Twitter. He plays on the Australian scene. His theme,
metal shredding.
Yeah, he's actually like he sculpted a guitar for his gore track. Yeah, he's made this heavy metal like brutal legend backstory for the orcs where they're just like he's trying to like essentially like get the metal and like conquering across all the like mortal realms, becoming more and more heavy metal. It's like the coolest story I've ever heard. I'm like,
I as I was saying earlier, it's like don't be afraid if you don't want to, if you don't have to have a narrative that even makes sense within the sense of the story. It's like make it your story. Yeah. Like I've seen a lot of themed armies before at tournaments, especially like I'm seeing now, I would say in my experience, a lot people embracing the lore of Age of Sigmar more. So this might have just been a thing in Warhammer Fantasy or just the coincidence, but I saw a lot of people making, I don't want to say meme armies, but like I did see like the rock concert sort of orc style army before, or taking just like, I would say like a core trope of an army and playing that up more just for aesthetic purposes.
Yeah.
Like the spirits of the forest sort of thing for a wood elf army, where it become almost more ghosts and sprites than necessarily people wearing you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no.
Where it's like it can be a little more ephemeral and more just about a visual theme than a clear, concise story with characters like Teyrathi.
Well, and one of the things I liked about his lore is that he made it very like poignant for the world. Like he's
Mm-hmm.
like for why he's fighting in the different realms. Like he has to go get like the crown from here, and like he gets these like heartstrings from this creature to like power his guitar. Like just these really cool like reasons.
He needs the guitar pick from the Tree of Life from Gairan.
Yeah, and just like these really awesome like super metal. Like it's awesome, man. No, Sean, man, he's a chat there.
It's good stuff.
It's really good stuff. I loved it. So back to you, Chuck.
I'd say back to I guess like the tenets of what it is to create a character and focus everything around it. One, like with Daughters of Cain, there's a bunch of different. There's not a bunch, but there is different heroes. So you got a Hag Queen, you got a Slaughter Queen, you have the Bloodrack Medusa, then you have the Cauldron versions. I've created versions for every single one of those. Like I said, as well as the one I took the Holy Havoc, where she's on the big base. But that way, no matter what list I take, however I want to play it, whether I want to play Kraith or the few times where I have played Hagnar or Calibron or Draichi Ganeth, I have Terathi there in some fashion because I have her in every version possible, and I still keep making more and more versions. It's not going to stop. I do have the latest one here, which is just a Cauldron. It's hard to see. Yeah, that looks bad. I'm not going to do it.
I like when you said you didn't spend $500 on a conversion, but
this
you
is the
spent
320
over $500 on conversions on a single character. Like how many of that?
Yeah, I mean
do you have?
I think you're winning the conversion fight club now.
I have 6. I have 6 versions and a 7th one in the works.
Of course you do. You're like your Terathi conversions are like me and a Ragnarok.
That's true. I collect Terathis. But then to tie off of but you also have to know whenever you're creating a character for your army if that's going to be your core focus, because it's going to branch from there. Is this an army like for me, Daughters of Cain? I'm playing them forever. They have grabbed me, and I've grabbed back on, and I'm just like, this wave is never stopping. Cause like you said, even right now, I'm painting Slaanesh and Daughters of Cain. I'm going to paint Lumineth and Daughters of Cain, and eventually I'm just going to paint Daughters of Cain because
Oh no, mic down.
Did we lose Chuck?
I think we might have lost Chuck.
Oh no.
A great face though.
Oh,
no.
no.
I'm back.
Oh, he's back. He's back.
Yay.
What's the last thing you heard?
That you're not going to stop.
Lumineth.
You're going to come back. Yeah, Lumineth.
Yeah. No matter what, Daughters of Cain is a constant down this, and like other armies coming in and out. So what I've started doing is, if you look at my Iden at Deepkin, I have Kashani, who's based upon Kesha, because I'll just keep the Pop Queen thing going. It's the Kashani Enclave, and it's tied to my Terathi army because she had a Shard of Cain that Terathi was after. My Slaanesh is based upon Hakati the Perverse, which is Katy Perry. Once again, heavy Cain influence because I have so many bits, so I just inject it everywhere. Mm-hmm. And then I have Miley Cypress, which I need to work on that name, but I like the pun for my Sylvaneth, which I need to convert at some point. But Lumineth will have one too. It's just, but it all ties back to this central, like the tree trunk, which is my Terathian cult. They'll all connect to it because I'm only going to dabble with those armies for fun here and there.
Yeah,
but I'm always like
there. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm always going to play Daughters of Cain. So
go on.
I would say, so yeah, you have to decide is this like an army that's like I'm just gonna play it for a little bit and move on, or is this the army that I really like this army, I'm gonna keep going with it? And then you know how far to take your character, how far to push it. Do you make 6 conversions of it? Do you want to have her in every single game? Do you want to never shut up about it and trick your friends to do an episode with people about narrative events just so you can talk about Terathi some more?
Yeah. No,
yeah.
That's why I made you go last.
I would say, the thing I took away from Chuck and was like, well, what if I would like to have the ability to have, that, so the character, that elf guy, the Night Scar, he'll be one model. I might have a few iterations only to paint it better and execute the idea more, but then I want to be able to have that model count as, say, could be a mage in Cities of Sigmar, could be something in Lumineth, could be something in a third army. But then the ability to for a pickup game, I'm taking something to the club for Tuesday nights or something like that. And then I want to be able to say, you know what, I want to play with Prince Nightscar tonight. And when I'm building the army and I'm thinking about it, I get to take that character and he gets to play in the army. And so I always have, I guess, because Chuck's approach is to have a different version of that model for any iteration it could be. But for me, it's like I want that one model, and this is that one. Right.
Yes, that's interesting. I have a
and
little
if you
bit...
do multiple...
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I've got
if you do have a...
Finish.
If you do decide to do like what I do and have multiple iterations, every Teyrathi conversion I had uses the same exact Canary head, so I have a consistency across all of them. And I'm not sure if the picture's up about with the Teyrathi family portrait.
I've got the full the family up here. The three.
That's most of them. But anyway, sorry.
No, what I was gonna say is I've actually had like a different situation from the both of you. So what started for me is like I have this rolling joke that I've done for every army I've ever built. Is there's always at least like one sculpt. Usually it's like one per box. Sometimes it's one per like several boxes. But I'll just be putting something together because I love building more than I like painting. You know, like I just very much a builder where I'm tinkering, getting the head just right. I'll put an Ungor down and then grab my like Gorgon and set it next to it because I want him exactly pointing the sword up at where its face is and things like that where I get tinkery with it. And I was building one of my Ossiarch Bone Reapers out of the first, actually out of the Feast of Bones there, and I decided to like have him dragging the sword behind him, and this is where X is gonna give it to you was born, and so I'm like, oh yeah, X is gonna give it to you, and so like I based it off of a wrapper, so this is this one, and what I've actually done then is I built X in every kit that I have for the army now. And so X is like, I've got him as the Mortek Guard. I've also now got him as a Cavalos. So his Cavalos pose is still the same sort of like sword kind of coming behind, and he's kind of like looming a little bit forward because he's naturally going to give it to you. We don't know what it is or when it will, or when the unspecified it will be given to you. We have our top scientists working on it, but it is certain. And then this is actually gonna all culminate when I put together my actual like Liege Cavalos, and I'm gonna be sure to like pose him up. And so I've got this progression of him through like foot troop to cavalry to hero that I've got him going through the army now. And
the question is, will he eventually rise to power and be on Katakros' base?
I mean, maybe he is.
As one of those.
He is disapproving Samurai Man.
Ew. There you go.
Whoa, plot twist. My own mind blown. Yeah, like he eventually becomes the Liege, because that's where Katakros gets the Liege keyword from, is having that samurai on his base. That's where the Liege keyword comes that gives him rules in the game. Sorry, we got real rules nerdy here. But no, as I was building this single character though, I began building the narrative in my head around this character, this model in my army. Because I'd already talked to Chuck about sort of hinging the plot to one character and putting to bed some of my worries about my story being too grandiose for Age of Sigmar, or like not worthy enough when we have characters like Katakros. I'm like, Katakros is the Katakros. I mean, look at that sculpt. Look at how awesome he is. Like, Nagash made him a body himself. I'm like, how do I put characters in my army to tell my story when I've got the Katakros sitting right next to all of it, right? Well, hinge it to the one character, you know? Katakros is just in and out of that army every now and then because he needs that unit for whatever purposes. And this helped me with my hobby. I'm going to be painting Katakros. He's going to be the white character. It's going to his color scheme is going to be his own because he's not part of my army. He's just intervening in what my army is already doing. The what are they called? The Nether. It's the Netherborn is what they're called. So, Paul, what do you got, man?
So you said that I've got this character and I built him for, the Liege Cavalos, and I built him for all these different, right? Mm-hmm. So why don't you delve deeper into that background and have the character be the person, the mortal person, and his soul is broken into all these different characters?
Hang on, no. It's the inverse actually. So what it is like when like the I don't want to dive into my personal lore. I want to make it more about you guys. But while we're here, the lore of the character X, and the reason he's known as X is because his name is in an ancient tongue that's too difficult for you to pronounce, and so you just take the first character that looks kind of like an X, and so he's called X by all the mortals and all the man things and all that stuff. He's his whole thing is that like every like Bone Reapers essentially like several souls blended together. You might have a dozen, or you might have half a dozen or a dozen souls blended together. X is the one who got dislodged in the Necroquake. So like he's got the other like 11 souls rattling around in his like little soul jar body. And, he's constantly proven himself on the battlefield and stuff like that, and he's worked his way up, getting sort of rebuilt and reforged with, like, sweeter armor and cooler stuff, and incorporating more souls into his container with, like, the Soul Masons and stuff. They're actually, like, infusing him with more souls. But, like, this one dominant personality has remained, like, intact, and he doesn't quite know why, and he's trying to keep it secret, then, from the villain within his own army. Unintentionally, I don't think I tried to do that on purpose, but I thought it made a little bit more sense. The threat externally isn't as good as the threat internally for this character, because he already has a natural, like, internal threat. He's got these other, like, 12 souls that are constantly vying to take control of his body, right? And then, like, you just take that and you bracket that same internal struggle with a literal struggle on the outside, so the sort of primary lead bone shaper within the army, whose name is unspecified yet. I think I'm calling him V for now. He's the main villain. So you've got X and V are like the main sort of two characters in my Ossiarch Bone Reapers armies, and they're like both necessary to extract Nagash's will to get the tithe, but secretly like X is just like, oh shit, I remember my family and stuff, and like not super cool with all the wanton murder. But, like, if I don't do it, everyone's going to find out, and, like, that's, like, not good, and he's just trying to figure out, like, because he's completely dislodged from time, he has no concept of, like, does his family even currently exist, was that 1,000 years ago, and he's just trying to piece the puzzles together, put the puzzle together as he decides, sort of as he's taking these problems that come at him, so, that's my
actually, that's a really kind of good point that I've been playing with a little bit as my Tale of Terathi has expanded over the past year. So a little bit of something for you to look forward to, and also a little bit of a cautionary like suggestion. So the something to look forward to is if you really focus on one character, like I focus on Terathi, keep expanding her, keep growing her story. There are times where I'm just like, well, I don't have to use Terathi because, like, within the lore of her own army, she's the top. She is the best. She's the most powerful thing there is. You know, obviously, if I put her next to anything else, like Marathi, she's below that. But within the army, she's not going to do everything. So I have developed sub-characters. Like, I have an extra Canary I had that shredded the wings, and she's on foot, and she's a Slaughter Queen. She's called the Wingless One. I have I created it for Martin's Lore Master event that he had a little invite at Nova. Carl LeBron, the first male Slaughter Queen in the Daughters of Cain army, because I was like, let's just go super crazy with it. So, like, I've created sub-characters for those times where, okay, I don't want to bring Terathi, but I want, like, someone who's representing her in a unique way. So, over time, as you develop, you will start creating that, like V. Like, V's an antagonist, but eventually they'll have their own lackey. Like, you know, who's X's lieutenant? Who's V's lieutenant? That's gonna be like within the ranks trying to figure this stuff out. And
I love brutal comedy, if that makes sense. Like, where it's just like it's kind of so the main like sort of support character for X is gonna be this like ruthless like 7 of 9 except murderous type character where like doesn't quite understand like is kind of a good, like by many constraints is actually sort of like a good guy. They're just like horribly brutal and like don't quite like get it, you know, like don't quite they're not operating on the same level as like
kind of like IG-88, like I'm a robot, this is just what I'm programmed to do.
Yeah.
It's like, but like you're brutally eviscerating people.
Yeah, and it's gonna be this. It's gonna be the stalker that I started to put together just for funsies, and I kind of like the face, and I like had the face like half tilted, and like I had this idea. I have this completely separate theory from Age of Sigmar, which is the best stories are about sad robots, not necessarily literally, but like figuratively. Sad robots are some of the best stories, and so like Blade Runner, it's about a sad robot, like. Like. It's just like sad robots. So like he's gonna be like the sad robot, except he like murders and stuff, or like Hitchhiker's Guide from the Galaxy. Like
A lot of Game of Thrones is about that too. A lot of smart, sad,
just sad
grouchy
robots.
old people.
Just sad robots. So yeah, so the Stalker is gonna be like the sort of like black comedy sad robot character, like archetype, as like, you know, because like, and like on like a weird sort of like primal level, like X just gets him, you know, like. So I've already started to develop him as a secondary character, as the sad robot like sidekick.
Nice. I like
Except
it.
he's hyper murderous. Like,
if I may add, no opportunity is too small for you to model stuff like that.
okay.
Like, that's why I say it's like unit champions are a modeling opportunity. Like all of the I have a hard time, at least from my perspective, because I like the Bone Reaper's lore. It's like I don't see a lot of modeling opportunities there to make them unique.
Because they're they
right.
Yeah.
But for Daughters of Cain, like individual witch elf, what are unit champions called, Chuck?
I get an extra +1 to hit.
Unit champions have a name.
They do. I honestly, top of my head, I'm drawing a blank on it.
Wow.
It's late, and like day was arduous.
Yeah, it's. Well, no.
And anyway.
Yeah.
So like a Swordmaster of Hoeth unit champion was named a Blade Lord, for example, and it's like, well, what does that mean? Explore that idea, or just make a character just like out of that, and then it's cool that they have stories, and sometimes they can have stories, but they don't always need them. It's to get back to sort of like the Weta Workshop mentality, where it's like, we're playing in a setting where the Industrial Revolution doesn't necessarily have to have what?
The leader's called a hag.
All right.
There
you go.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's just as easy to make equipment for two people as different as it is to make equipment for two people the same. So you shouldn't be afraid to just add small details here and there just to make them look like their own person. It's cool if they have a story that fits into your sort of like little ecosystem of your little society that you have there. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it can just be like, I want to express an idea just to make this one person in the unit feel unique. You can bring in Krell and convert them in a way just to make them look like the unit champion for the Graveguard. You can
actually, Martin, you've inspired me to do this because spoiler alert, I'm still doing witch elves. I'm actually going to do 90 plastic witch elves this year to bring me to 300 total.
There you go. Yeah.
And one's going to be armored based upon the
210
of Alex Gonzalez.
Weird number too.
But yeah, I'm going to do like a unit of armored witch elves based upon the concept of Alex Gonzalez, Warhammer hero, and great guy, put out there. And the leader for that, I grabbed the it's a 40k model. It's the Magos from the Genestealer cult, the female Magos. Mm-hmm. She's going to be converted as the hag for that unit. I have the old Dark Elf Sorceress to be the hag of another unit. So I'm adding like $15 to $30 per unit to make really custom leaders. So it is a really cool idea, and I'm going to try it out because Martin really inspired me to do that.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of examples of it, like, at least in my current armies, because I've only ever worked on, at least while I've been on social media, Stormcast and Legions of Nagash. Like, I have the Cities of Sigmar army from, 2017, before I really, got into talking about my hobby in social media. Mm-hmm. But for Lumineth, it's definitely going to be a thing where I take that unit champion and I basically turn it into a character in its own right and use that to try and express stuff for the banners, or another good way of just bringing things in. You can bring in, especially for painters, the freehand opportunity for banner bearers or musicians is just...
What I love about this is you have very narrative, character focused and very visual focused, and trying to incorporate these two and sort of benefit each other. I really like that. I've actually, just talking to y'all now, I'm like, you know what I need to do for my Hekatos and stuff is they actually do get to be distinct a little bit in the lore, and I'm like, so that's where I'm going to put a lot of the flavor of the unit is on that Hekatos. The rest might be automata, but the Hekatos can be the personality of that unit. Right. And so, like, maybe they take, like, little trophies. Like, this particular Hekatos got blended with just 20 serial killers. And so he just takes all of the, just takes all of the trophies and stuff like that. So you
can also do war paint, like, on their bone and faces and stuff, like woad and like, don't be, like, I know some people are like, I can't paint for shit. Just paint little streaks, like, to show it like woad or war paint.
Yeah, cool.
Braveheart those skeletons.
Paul, what's up?
I think there is one thing that we all missed that I think all three of us have done.
Yeah.
And obviously, I imagine you have done as well. And that is writing your own stories. Writing your own.
Actually, that was
right.
Actually, that was just what I was just about to actually get to is the cautionary part. The timeline you had earlier is literally all the events I've been to. I have lore written for the majority of those events, or lists and art and all that. And you look at that timeline, you're like, oh, this is easy. Chuck probably just threw this together. That took me 3.5 weeks, I think, of gathering up everything that I put together and put out on my blog, just assuming, oh, it's out there, it's easy to get. And I collated it all. Right now it's on a Google Drive. I'm trying to figure out the best way to share it so people can just take the pieces they want to look at and read. But create the timeline, write down, organize, put it in a central location of the narrative that you do, just so you can keep that consistent story flowing. And it doesn't have to be like, right one thing right after the other. Like, there's time jumps in my story because there's plenty of time in the mortal realms. Actually, I'm gonna wait to put out like the complete thing after Doug from Two Up Tough, also Warhammer hero, does his lore competitions, because I entered it as well, and I have a pretty nice new narrative arc for Terathi going on that I don't want to spoil until he's done with his competition, whether win or lose. I'll put it out after the fact.
If everyone here loses, we're gonna do RantCast does 2+ stuff, and we're just gonna read our stories. We're gonna make our own lore competition
I'm all for it.
with blackjack and hookers.
All right.
Well, forget the hookers and the blackjack. Just stories.
But definitely, like, organize yourself. Even if you think it might just be like a character for a few events for you, just put it all in one location. Just keep it together. Other fun things you can do, like I held this up earlier, like that's Teyrathi's custom rune. I put that on my army.
I love that it's a visual play on the Calibron rune too, by the way.
Kraith. It's actually.
Kraith. I'm sorry, I meant Kraith.
I figured. But yeah.
I'm just having flashbacks to like Calibron beating me last weekend. I'm just like, no.
Well, we'll do a pickup game at Adepticon. I'll beat you of Kraith, so you can just flash.
There we go. Yeah. All right. Awesome.
But like I
get in line.
Like,
okay,
go to Adepticon, don't even play championships, just like the ass kicking line of content creators. Oh man.
But like I've done a journal for her for like some events, and I just add more to it as the story goes on. Just you can do these little things to keep track of where things are at, and it's like but definitely organize now, like for yourself. With X, organize them, like even if you write the simplest thing, if it's a paragraph, just organize it, put it in place, put a Google Drive folder that just says X, this is what he's giving to you, or whatever you like.
No, I love it. I love the X and what is he giving to you. It's unspecified. We're not certain yet. We have quantum physicists on it right now. We don't know what it is they're trying to solve for it, but
exactly, and then or arcane mages are trying to scry what it is.
Yeah, right.
But like even to the point where if you look at my Terathi's timeline, the very first thing, like I didn't realize the first Adepticon, the first place I took the Daughters of Cain when they just came out, I named the army the Teylothian cult. And for some reason between then and Raw, I changed, it was Teyrathi, not Teylothi, probably because Teyrathi sounds cooler. So I wrote into the lore, she changed the name, but I forgot that. So that was kind of like a retcon type thing. Like, when I'm doing this progress.
Or
so, like,
historians got it wrong, right? Like, historians got it wrong, and it was a translation
it could be.
error.
Unreliable narrator.
There you go.
Hey. His favorite thing. But, like, it's easy to forget what you've done even a few years ago, so that's why I just suggest organizing, because it'll make your narrative so much better. Because I'll open that folder just to get ideas for what I want to do going forward.
Dracon, real quick, like lost your creativity and you themed your DOK Medusa Temple Nest army off of as Shara in World of Warcraft. One of the first things we said at the beginning of the show was to like not be afraid to steal like an artist. Good artists borrow, great artists steal. So don't be afraid to base your lore on something, and then from there, just play with the dials until you make it your.
Chuck turned a meme into an institution.
Yeah,
Anything is possible.
yeah.
Actually, to the point with Azara, I never really cared for the character in World of Warcraft. And then when the her little part of the expansion came out, we watched the trailer, and my wife and I watched it, because we played WoW on and off. We don't play as much anymore. And I'm sitting there, I'm just like, I really like her now. And she's like, you never liked her. But now I really like her. And she looks at me, she's like, it's just Marathi. I'm like, shut up. You're right. I really like her now. Yeah, don't be afraid. That's a really cool concept, and I'm sure you can get some fantastic paint schemes off of Naga from World of Warcraft to put onto your units. Like, I say go for it. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, the visual inspiration's there. And this is something I don't know if we highlighted it, but Chuck, you're really a champion of throwing yourself into it. Like, it's just throwing yourself into the thing, and that's where that particular advice might come in handy. Is just throw yourself into that concept if that's what your thing is, and just see where it takes you, because I mean, especially you're just in the note taking phase. If you look at, I was joking earlier that if you look at my notebooks for whether it's my Warhammer notes or my actual stories that I write, try to get published here when I'm struggling with that, like they look like Da Vincian journals. It's just, even this is like a mess right now with squiggles and shit. But throw yourself into it, take notes, and see where they take you. You might go back and you see a little doodle you wrote besides one note, and then that just clicks for some inspiration later. I think that ties into exactly what you were saying just now. Is you're filling out your timeline. Give yourself little blurbs. A single
narrative without fear.
Yeah,
narrative without fear.
There you go. Narrative at all costs. Don't be afraid to just. A lot of my notes from even my huge projects. If you look on my wall right here, I've got about 20 or 30 note cards here. That this is a story right here. This is the outline. It's a single sentence or a couple words on each, and I can look at that and go, okay, Alex fights Dio, fights Anna. I know exactly what that chapter is for me, because I know those three characters and I know my plot outline and what's about to happen there then. So even just or sad robot meets little girl. And so I know that then my side character, the sad robot, has to meet a little girl, and then I already kind of know that it's just going to be this weird kind of funny scene where she tries to hand him a flower and he just accidentally murders the flower because it's all he's programmed to do, but then orcs show up and he just murders all the orcs, and then pats the little girl on the head and doesn't murder her, so we have character growth.
Character growth. Well, it's the other interesting thing too that I was learning as I was collating everything, and then started writing more in it. I got Martin to help me with some of my writing for my recent submission to 2 Up Tough's competition, but the one thing that's an easy trap to fall into with this sort of stuff is it can be all in your head. And if you like it on your head, that's great. Just if that's where you're happy with it living, let it live there. I had this huge thing in my head, and I just realized I didn't really actually put this out other than through random tweets and lore that's all over the place. So that's kind of my goal this year, is to put it forward so people know. I want to walk up to a table with a game with somebody who's maybe on Twitter and can go point and be like, that's Terathi, I'm gonna kill her. I'll be like, you can try.
I was about to say, to add to that, I'm on kind of the opposite end, where it's I'm used to having people to play with who are my friends who are not the typical audience for the type of content that I want to make in terms of that story. And I don't know about the other people here other than Mr. Meth, but I'm definitely an aspiring novelist. And I try not to write too much Warhammer stuff. Unfortunately, I've done nothing but do that, because I've been trying to get back to my original fiction. And my original fiction is very much not inspired by Warhammer. It's a little more historical fiction with a touch of horror. And it's thinking about just a matter of just time. I want to be able to have my vision of what I have for my narrative easy to recognize, but if no one has any other like outside knowledge, they're satisfied, or like I'm satisfied with like being able to tell a story with just what's in front of me. Like I have these cool elves that people haven't really seen elsewhere, and then the characters look sufficiently unique that people are going to be like, there's an elf with the night sky coming out of half of his face.
Oh yeah.
And then there's like I don't know what the other characters are going to be yet for like the elf army, like the wider sort of society I'm going to make yet, but they're going to be sufficiently unique. And like the idea is just for it to end there. Which creates that sort of cultural inheritance in art history, like in Lord of the Rings. We can tell what a dwarf thing is immediately, and we can like understand like what their weapons are like, and what like we don't really see that many dwarves in the original Lord of the Rings films, but they created enough context in the architecture and like the costumes of the handful of characters.
You can actually like by having like points of visual consistency, you don't. Yeah. One of the worst things you could do is actually describe the backstory of something in terms of pure writing technique, by the way.
Right.
You're not supposed to tell people the backstory. You're just supposed to assume it. You're just supposed to assume it and just like pick up where the story's supposed to pick up.
Show, don't tell.
Exactly. Show, don't tell. I mean, when you're dealing with minis, you're just like in the realm of show all the time, aren't you?
Right. And I have to try and make that as effective as possible in the brief time period I have to show my miniatures to somebody, preferably when I'm kicking their butt.
Right. Well, I just assume that people are going to see X in his like pose that I've meticulously sculpted and understand that in undisclosed time and place, they will receive it.
It is coming.
Right.
We need to do a trailer for it. It is coming. Adepticon 2020.
I gotta do a legally distinct remix of the like X gonna give it to you, like a sample, I suppose, of the beat, so that like I can draw that in and just like slow it down or something. I'll get Haywo to mix it. His soundbite is like one of the greatest.
Yes, it's very distinctive.
Don't forget costume. Yeah, so like costuming is another.
Oh yeah.
Chuck knows all about that.
Yeah, well, man, we're gonna have a costume off.
I have the pedigree.
Maybe
for
not
that.
this Nova. I won't be making this Nova, but hopefully next Nova or the Nova following that, I'll have my X cosplay. I think.
That's great. That's great.
I'll eventually build a costume for something that isn't Dragon Age.
There you go. Man, well, we found a way to get nerdier than talking Age of Sigmar and Doctor Who. I'm like,
we
well
did
done,
it.
everybody.
To quote Vince,
well
it's
done.
fine.
It's fine.
It's fine. So one of the things we haven't talked about is how to play a narrative on the tabletop, right? Like how to develop these characters in our games. We talked about the results of it, right? But I think one of the things that Chuck does really well is he tells you, right? Like, and Martin, you do it as well. Is like your miniatures show you the story. Chuck, you tell the story, and I think that's something that I always do when I play games, especially in a tournament setting. Is I go through and I'm like, this is my army, and then I explain it, and it takes like 5 minutes, but it tells some other player about the kind of game that I want to play. Not that I don't want to play competitively, but just like, look, this is what I'm going to try and get out of it, right? And motivation for your character, and you're like, this is what's actually going on, right? So my Gropek Scuttlers are Karagon Warlords, but they're converted to be goblins. So they have one character who, rules-wise, counts as a Lord Ordinator, but is actually the Grot Mushroom Shaman. Mm-hmm. And he's just like complete psychotic, he likes whole areas of Grots. Because he wants them to go fly these airships that nobody really knows how to fly, but he convinces them it's the best idea ever. And then they go and they get murdered, and then he goes and gets another tribe. Right? If you explain that background to your opponent when you start playing the game, a lot of times in with you, right? And like, so at Adepticon 2 years ago, I was playing this army and not doing great, of course, because I don't play enough games to be good at it. And you can set your own narrative goals of like, all right, I've lost, right? We all get to that point where like you're playing a game and you're like, okay, I've lost. but I'm gonna take down that ironclad because I want my army to have an ironclad, and I can't add one until I've beaten one in combat, right?
Oh,
Or
I see.
something
Okay.
Yeah.
to the game after the point where the game is already decided, and that's something that I really enjoy about playing narratively.
I've seen people do this to lesser extents where they're like, I'm going to kill your general with this character, right? I mean, that's what you're doing is like maybe you don't have flashy names and visually stunning models, but you're creating these little mini stories in the moment that help engage you in the game. And that's really, I think, what a lot of this is about is helping you increase your enjoyment of the game by embracing this other sphere, this narrative. And you don't need to be a master level hobby hero, painter or narrative, to get these little like lore wins at the table. And I think that's something that's just going to help you, especially like, okay, yeah, you're losing the game, but now you're going to kill an ironclad. I always joke with my opponents when I'm bringing a Gosh to the table. I'm like, I'll walk up to them. I'm like, no reason, but who's your favorite model? And you can lie to me. And I'll just like say that to them, and then and then they're just like, and it's astonishing how deep they get into telling me about their favorite model before they realize I'm gonna try to hand to dust it.
And it's gone.
And then so then I get into my like WWE heel persona, at the table, and like they already get that like I'm essentially role playing when I'm at the table. I can't turn off my brain in that respect. Like I have to get into my persona, be the bad guy to try to beat you. And that little joke at the beginning of the game, they realize like they're on board with the joke then, with my little mini personal story arc that I'm gonna try to be a villain. I was playing Dave from Garage Hammer at PACA, and like he was like, "Oh man, awesome charge!" I'm like, "Don't cheer me. I'm the bad guy." Like stuff like that. Where I'm like, quit applauding. And he's like, "Man, that really gets to you, doesn't it?" And like, and then so then he got even more into the like clapping and applauding, like things that I would do that were bad for him. And we had this great game because we had created this personal narrative between each other in that moment. And I think that those are little things you can be mindful of at your table, whether it's a tournament or LGS or with your friends, is just dialing up some of those little stories. I mean, that's what a narrative is. It's a story, and it does it. Yeah, go ahead.
I was to say that's the interesting thing. Like whenever if you look at the notes, because I do the little battle journal for all my games of Age of Sigmar. And I have, like, most of them are competitive games. It's like, turn 1, this happened, turn 2, this happened, so on and so forth. But there's also a section, like, I mean, I track my Kraith rolls. Sure, that's fun, but I'll, like, if someone takes out something amazing, like if Tarathi kills Keeper of Secrets, I'm going to write that down because that's going in my story somewhere. Like, those little things that just happen there, like, oh, that was really cool, and, like, it's fun. Or even, like, an interaction like you had. Those Night Haunt had a dead cheerleader that was cheering you on and it was making you mad. Like, you can incorporate that.
You can imagine Nagash just like deadpan, just scowling at these upstart Night Haunt, and like, and he understands arrogance and like being snide, and so he's just like, are they sarcastically mocking me or are they cheering me because I'm the Lord of Death? Like he's just, you can imagine it. I mean, it was great. It was like oh yeah, we don't want to rebel against you like Nagash Sama, but like Reikener's making us do it. Like, I think there's little things like that. And again, narrative is just about a story, and go ahead, Paul.
And here's the thing, right? Like a lot of the games that we play are at tournaments, right? Because that's where you get the most hobbyists together. At the end of the day, Con or something, right? There's 220 players. There's one winner, right? You get top 5 or something like that. But for everything else, right, there's a game than trying to win. Mm-hmm. There's more to play a game than just having the best list. And if you have something else that motivates your game other than winning, not only will you be a better player for that social contract, but you're playing this game to have fun, I hope, right? Because that's the point of playing a game. If you don't want to have fun, I'm probably going to have a hard time playing against you because I don't want to sit across the table from somebody whose only objective is to win. And if they fail at winning, their day is ruined.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
That's
part
a
of the
lot of
reason that I
pressure on
embrace
you.
the narrative.
That's a
It
lot of
is.
pressure on you.
It's like
because
it's a
now
lot of pressure on you.
Because me as the opponent now, if I beat you, I have ruined your day. And some people get a type of pleasure out of that. But I'm not that kind of guy. I pretend to be on the internet, but I don't. I want you to have a great game. That's my first. That's my first priority when I walk up to the table personally. Is I want you to have a good game. I want you to have a good experience. Because then you're going to go like and subscribe on Twitch and or YouTube, right? No, it's like I want you to have a good game. And the win only mentality, it can cramp my style too, man.
The thing is, right? Like,
I mean, I will kill your favorite model, but I don't want to. I don't want to ruin your day.
Yeah, but exactly, that's the fun, right? The fun is what happens that doesn't make sense, what happens that is not statistically accurate, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is the quirks of playing a dice-based game against an opponent.
Mm-hmm.
Is that sometimes stuff just goes crazy, right? Like crit rolls are a great example of like, I know statistically how these rolls are supposed to happen.
But when they happen,
it just doesn't work. Yeah, when they happen, it's great, right?
Yeah.
But like, that's part of the story, and the game is a social contract, right? You walk up to the table, you expect the player that you're playing against to want to play the game, right? Number one. Number two, have some understanding of his army, right? And hopefully more than just I've read the rules on an app and had somebody else paint the army and show up. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but when you're going to a tournament, right?
It's a different hobby for everyone. People are allowed to love the game, and that's it.
100%.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right? And I can play great games against those people as well. But I would like to be able to engage with you with the lore that is included with the army that you bought, right? There's more than just the rules there. And the narrative allows you to engage the other player where they're
on that level,
instead of just playing the rules, right?
Well, like the Slaves to Darkness tome has one of the greatest intro sentences in I mean, this is the man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed moment for Games Workshop. It's Sigmar is a false god. Like, boom. Both the first sentence.
You know what you're getting from the rest of that book.
And you're just like, the rest of that book, you've got it. But then when the player walks up to the table having read that and they play against your city's army, they're just like, oh shit. Like, like that becomes another layer of enjoyment. And again, I will never harsh on how people play the game to enjoy the game within the confines of the rules and all that stuff. Like, I really, if you only do enjoy the game from like winning and stuff like that, cool. And I hope you find other people that can engage you on that level. And I actually have the ability to shift gears. I've talked about this before. Is like, I have this moment where like I'm walking up to the table, I'm trying to figure out what type of game you have. But if you walk up to the table and cosplay, I know what type of game to expect. If you walk up to the table and you start telling me the story about your specific Maw Crusher and like why it's a wacky color, I know what type of game to expect. Like, that's why I'm when I walk up to the table with you, I'm saying what's your favorite model, and I have this like smirk on my face. Like, I'm telling you about what type of game we're about to have too. And it's really, again, the narrative side of it, embracing that. It's just adding an enhancer to all of that stuff you already enjoy about the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think narrative doesn't get in the way of anything. It only enhances whatever you do.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be a great way of putting it. I think that's anyone got any lingering bits they wanna hammer home, because that's a pretty good point to end the night on.
Nagash is the false god.
Oh man, we're gonna have words later, man.
I legitimately do want to have a conversation about you.
Yeah,
I do. Super interesting narrative hook.
Let me just look at my thing one more time.
Look at your notes, Chuck.
Yeah.
Chuck, I'll bring you on one more time to talk more Teyrathi, but I feel like you had such a pile of notes and we only touched the surface of them.
I think it was all kind of covered between all of us, just touching and hitting the points.
Yeah.
So
I would say even though we paint toy soldiers, I think at its core it should have a certain realism, like how the figures look. And I think I've succeeded as in my hobby by making people, like, basically tricking people into believing what I've painted is like historical or real rather than these pure fantasy pieces. And that's what my visual storytelling is all about.
So I have one sort of final question that I think we can all answer it, and we can kind of go out on this one. So what if, a lot I've got a lot of people who follow, and they tend to just they do a lot more painting, a lot more reading about their things, a lot more building their lists, and actually going out into the world and taking their lists out and doing stuff like that, right? Usually, I have a set of advice for trying to get your reps in your games, and if that's what you're trying to focus on, and trying to get your hobby. I think the hobby is pretty self-sufficient, trying to get your paint reps in. How do you get your narrative reps in with the community? If you want to take your stories out, if you want to, flex your narrative muscles, like, one, obviously, go try to beat me at Doug's lore competition, but beyond that, this once in a lifetime, how do you, I guess, I'll just kind of start in the top left. Chuck, what advice would you give to somebody that wants to, like, one, just hashtag get good at narrative, and two, kind of engross themselves or immerse themselves in a way that allows them to flex their narrative muscles and get some narrative out there and engage narratively with the community?
I mean, first is figure out how you want the narrative. Do you want a narrative, an army, a character, or some other way that I can't think of? There's infinite ways to do it. Two, suggestion from me would be to never shut up about it, ever. Literally never. But if you find what you love, as far as the narrative goes, just keep going with it. Don't ever stop. And like, really, it should be something that is on your mind all the time. Like, where am I going with this next? Like, whenever you open up War Scroll Builder or Azir, and you're building, your list for your army of a narrative for, to the point that while you're building a list, be like, how's this going to fit with my narrative? How's this going to change my narrative? No matter what type of event you're going to. Like I said, just do it often, and don't be afraid of doing something and going, that doesn't work, I didn't really like that, and just roll it back a little bit and keep going. It's your story. Just, like, narrative without fear.
Yeah, narrative without fear. And again, it's all lovers, it's all knobs. You can always play with them. That's the beauty of writing. That's the beauty of narrative. I'll do a whole RantCast on just writing. I won't even call it RantCast. 1 hour I'll tell you about how great writing is. Martin, man, what do you got to add to that?
So I would say read. Don't be afraid to read. Or I would say research in general. Research the things that influence you. Understand why you like them and why you want to, like, incorporate that or learn from it to better your hobby. Don't be afraid to share, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
There you go. And your battle tome, by the way, is a great place to start. If you think it's intimidating to, when we read comics, we actually have to have reader guides for comics and all the crossovers. Once you're trying to jump in on a particular character, it can be really overwhelming. Black Library feels like that to me. I grew up in the comic world, so that's not. But for me, I'm like, oh, where do I start reading all this Black Library stuff? And now that audiobooks are picking up, it's like I get one set of list of audiobooks from one friend, and I get a set of other books from another friend. That seems really intimidating for me. Your tome, it's a great place to start, especially for AOS. They read like propaganda, like just rags for your army. So if you're already on board with that army, or if you're not, if you're still trying to figure out what army you love, man, hit up the LGS. Just thumb through a couple battle tomes. Read the lore part. Something will resonate with you. It tends to. There's enough. I call them sharp edges. There's enough sharp edges in Warhammer, just the way it works, that you're gonna catch on something. It's gonna stick, and then from there, you've got that first foothold, and then from there you go. Hey man, I love Nagash. Now what do I read from Black Library? Oh, well, how about you read these 3 books? Like, then it becomes a lot easier to navigate through this quagmire of you know, a 30-year-old game with oodles of lore and stuff like that. Paul, what do you got to say?
What I would say is that one of the ways I've done that is to make my terrain into a narrative thing, right? So like I can put that out there and then other people interact with that, right? And they create stories within that realm.
There you go.
And that's something that I really enjoyed. It was something I actually built for Coalescence 2.5 years ago, but really has become its own thing just because when you look at it, it's different, right? And for me, that's an important way of playing is to welcome someone into, like, when you walk up to the table, you know this is not a normal game of Age of Sigmar because the table looks nothing like a normal game, right? Like, the colors are different, the setting is different, there's different levels.
There's ramparts and shit.
Yeah, exactly. So it's about communicating, right, the idea, and like that's what narrative is: communicating the game you want to play, communicating what you like about the army, like just communicating with the other player, because you only get so much time with another player when you're playing a game. You get an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours, right? If you're lucky, you get to play an entire day-long game, 8,000 points or something like that. But what it provides you with is you are able to stand there for that amount of time with another person that is interested in the same hobby, in the same models, in the same game, right? And that should be a win-win for both of you, right? That should be something that you walk away from that and say, oh, that was really fun. I really enjoyed that. And anything you can do that can communicate that to the other player when they walk up to the table, you've already bridged that gap. And what kind of a game is going to be the most enjoyable right now? Or, you know what? I don't want that game. I would love to play just a normal game of 4x6. Age of Sigmar, roll off the book. Great, right? You get that out of the way right away, and you can just play the game differently. It's about communicating with the other player, so the expectations are not completely disparate from what the experience is.
So that's one of the beautiful things about our game. That's what makes this game. I always use the analogy like Magic the Gathering. I can walk up with headphones on. I don't need to talk to you at all to play a game of Magic. I turn creatures sideways. You know exactly what that means. I never have to say. With Age of Sigmar, we have to communicate. You don't have to have a great big conversation, but at the very base level, you have to communicate. I am charging this unit. I am doing this. I am doing that. And then from there, you can expand on that and get more social with it. Invest more into these interactions that on the surface is gameplay, but then can go a lot deeper by adding those narrative layers. One real quick, I want to touch on some advice AOS Coach has here in chat. He says play narrative scenarios from your battle tome, like break from the sort of standard battle plans. Play those narrative scenarios. This is the only way I played Warhammer Fantasy Battle growing up was the stuff in our tomes. We didn't know. I don't even remember there being battle plans dedicated. It was all victory points and shit out of our army books. And then we'd have these White Dwarf. We played a ton of White Dwarf, plans, I guess. So, but yeah, man,
great advice.
Yeah, so that great advice, everyone. Chat gang, thank you so much for hanging out. You're the show within the show. Martin, anything you want to put on blast? Shout out to
Warhammer Weekly.
Warhammer Weekly,
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Vince, yeah, go watch.
It was their 5-year anniversary this week.
It was Warhammer Weekly. And then if people wanted to see your sort of narrative hobby journey, where do they follow you on Twitter?
So you can follow me on Twitter. One of the things I made a resolution like a few years ago was to stop using usernames. So generally, if you just search my name on Twitter or Instagram, I will come up. But I am on Instagram as The Wandering Prince, one word, and then you can just look me up on Twitter by my name. But generally, I post like a lot of work in progress stuff, especially like in these interim periods between armies where it's like I'm throwing ideas out there. Like I pretty much got through this guy, this color test. I'm probably gonna post him later tonight, and stuff like that. But if you do not like Lumineth, I don't recommend following me because it's going to be that for a while, and some competition pieces sprinkled in here and there.
There you go.
But that's basically what I'm going to be working on, and hope I might make some sort of blog or something in the future, like Chuck's Strength Hammer blog about sort of the process, and maybe putting into more concise words my thought process and like what I'm looking to achieve out of the Army project.
All right.
That was me.
AOS coach says, "Do more Sons of Behemoth, less elves."
We'll be waiting a long time for that.
Chuck, man, what do you want to put on blast, and where can people follow your narrative journey if they want to know more about Teyrathi?
If you want to know more about Teyrathi, you can follow me at Instagram or Twitter at strengthhammer_, or my blog / website strengthhammer.net. That links to my YouTube, the blog, and podcast and all that.
You did another podcast episode this week.
I did. I talked a lot about Teyrathi and Daughters of Cain. Go figure.
But go, man.
To put on blast, I went to my friend Sean, he's a commission painter, just went full time not too long ago, and he's actually streaming throughout the day. Brush for Hire, so twitchtv.brushforhire. He's usually streaming from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. because that's just what he's doing all day for his job now, and he'll usually wear funny things like a hot dog costume. So if you want to have a good time before RantCast comes on Twitch, just check out twitch.tv/brushforhire.
I'm gonna go ahead and add him to my auto host list too. I need to start getting some better auto hosts here. It's a lot of my old speedrunner friends. And then Paul, what are you gonna put on blast, and where do people find you?
Well, they can find me at the Mortal Realms podcast. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram at PJ Shard. What I would like to put on blast is just if you are interested in this idea of the narrative, if you're interested in the idea of building your armies, right? Like, go listen to the Stormcast podcast. It's the GW official one, right? So it'll sound like obvious answers there, but like has done some amazing stuff talking about his narrative and how that goes forward, right? It's some easily consumable content that really tells you about what the people who are passionate and do this for their job can tell you about what they have done and how it works out, right? I mean, you have a free resource to the people who make the game, so why not use it?
Yeah. Yeah, the OBR one did tons when I was in like pure hype mode making RantCast, that OBR one was just like, my eyes were wide. I was just like, oh my god.
To be fair, that is Phil Kelly, and Phil Kelly is like one of the premier minds behind all of Warhammer.
Yeah.
He's worked for Games Workshop for decades.
Yeah.
And he's one of those guys where it's like if he worked for a video game company, he would have been like the powerhouse behind some crazy IP. But we're lucky enough to have him
he's
behind
like
Warhammer.
the Tim Schafer, right?
Yeah.
Flexing those old video game Kotaku muscles. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining me. Chat gang, you are the show within the show. Thank you for staying up with us tonight. Good night, everybody. Let's do this again sometime.